EAGLES, Eagles.
And welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365, brought to you by the great people at Fritz Bianculli Law Firm. I'm your host, Zander. Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen. A Tuesday edition here as we are getting closer and closer to NFL free agency, inching closer to the NFL draft. The combine is now in the rearview mirror. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, my friend? You're muted, John.
One day I didn't check, and I'm not. I'm muted. What was going on, StreamYard? Come on.
We're about to bail on StreamYard. I'm having big issues with StreamYard, John.
Really? Yeah.
We're about to bail. That's what I'll tell you.
All right. Well, there's some breaking news there. That's bigger breaking news than Philadelphia. You got the first signing, Taquan Graham. Taquan Graham is back.
There you go, baby. Taquan Graham, John, signs. Some other things that came out yesterday, so plenty to talk about here today. John, we will have a great show today when it comes to the NFL draft. We have Ian Cummings on. So if you've been watching our show for longer than a year, you know Ian Cummings well. He's been joining this program for many years now, leading into the draft. And he is as good as it gets, John, when it comes to breaking down prospects, individual players, strengths, weaknesses, draft positionings, all these different things. So I'm looking forward to talking to Ian today. We had Rick Saratella on last week. We had Devin Jackson on. We're going to talk to him later in the week. And now we got Ian Cummings really starting to get a good feel for the NFL draft, John, coming up. So a lot of exciting things ahead as we are here at March 3rd. And really, John, everything's out in front of the Eagles right now as they look to build their team for the 2026 NFL season.
Yeah, free agency obviously starts essentially next Monday with the legal negotiation period. So, that'll clarify things further as far as how far they go to draft proof the roster, so to speak. You always want to fill as many holes with at least competent players so you don't feel the need to reach. Right now, we were talking before we went on the air, the biggest potential reach position, because they don't have anybody, is tight end right now. All three mean tight ends from last season are unrestricted free agents, so you got to make decisions there. Have a couple futures guys, EJ Jenkins, Shaheem Bell, but obviously you're not going to count on them. So, that's a rare position where kind of Howie has left himself open-ended a little bit. So clearly he's going to bring in some bodies in free agency at tight end. They might not be big names like fans want, but if you're not able to get Dallas Goedert back, but you need role players, and so it might be a blocking tight end. It might be something of that nature, a third tight end who can play on special teams. You might bring Kylen Granson back because that's Kylen Granson, who's a great special teams player. But you need bodies at that position. And they're obviously going to draft one, maybe two. They'll bring in some undrafted free agents. So they'll populate the offseason roster. But very rarely do they go into a season where you say, wow, they don't have anybody. And that's where they are at tight end right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. And for those who missed it yesterday, Matthew Berry put out his 35 notables based on what he heard from the NFL Combine. He's with NBC Sports, for those who don't know. Matthew Berry, not a reporter, but a pretty credible guy. He put out this. While many of the Eagles headlines these days are about whether A.J. Brown will stay or go, one player I'm told that will definitely be moving on from Philly this offseason is Dallas Goedert. Now, that's what Matthew Berry put out. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not, but John, I started to gain a little confidence that, hey, maybe Goedert ends up back in Philly, which I think would be a good thing with the potential changes happening this offseason. What do you make of that latest update from Matthew Berry? And, man, as you just laid out, John, without Dallas Goedert, man, it looks bleak at that position. Now, I know you got a whole offseason in front of you, and I'm sure Howie's going to do some things to clean it up. But I won't feel too good, John, if the plan is a bunch of draft picks and Kylen Granson. I'll say that.
Well, it depends on the draft picks. I think, Kenyon Sadiq would excite some people with
Is
his
that I
athleticism.
mean, you're going to rely on a rookie to replace. I don't know. I get it. He's a good player, but one, I don't see him drafting a tight end that high, and two,
Either do I, but
putting a lot of stock in a rookie.
well, it happens. It happens all over the league. I mean,
Yeah, I get it.
Sam Laporta's a guy that Daniel Jeremiah compared Max Clare to, or Clare, however you pronounce it. We'll ask Ian later. Laporta just took the league by storm as a rookie. You're like, what's Detroit going to do? And he's a second round pick. I mean, it happens. So I wouldn't completely rule it out when you look at a pretty deep draft when it comes to the tight ends. If you hit the right position, if you hit the right player, he can play right away. And I think they'll draft a tight end right now as we speak. Certainly by the end of day 2, I would think. And yeah, you probably don't feel comfortable about it, but I always thought it was a small window for Dallas Goedert to return to begin with. It would have to be a 1-year deal, probably less than he made last year. So coming off a 13 touchdown season, people get enamored with that. And I don't think he played that well overall, but a lot of observers get blinded by the touchdowns. And he typically has been a pretty good blocker and kind of fell apart in that aspect of the game, which was a big deal for the Eagles because couldn't set the edge in the running game, and all of a sudden they're having all these troubles, and now they're changing schemes and everything else. So, he had a difficult time, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody who can set the edge at tight end. And it might be boring and it might not be interesting, but it's important if the Eagles want to run this offensive scheme.
So the offensive scheme then, John, in theory, I mean, when we first heard about the hiring of Mannion and the whole big shift, I mean, we potentially thought, all right, well, not that you're not going to need blockers, but hey, passing offense, West Coast spread. If you're looking again for a blocking tight end, does that insinuate they're not going to change as much, or do you still need great blocking tight ends in any offense? I know that, but it did feel like for a second, all right, well, the priority is going to be a great pass catching tight end, to be able to spread the football around in this new offense that we thought was coming. Does that change your thought process on what might be coming on the offense? How do you see it from that perspective?
Well, they look, they still want you prefer to have George Kittle or somebody like that who can do everything. That's the real goal. That how realistic is that?
Pretty rare, right?
Yeah, pretty rare. Dallas was probably the second tier when it came to that in his prime as a very good receiver and a good blocker. But again, especially run blocking last year really fell from his typical norm. And that showed up because obviously Grant Calcaterra can't do it. And, Kylan Granson can't do it. So once Dallas Goedert falls, to give you an example, so Dallas 28th of the 75 tight ends by PFF, fine. That's fine. That's good. I mean, down from he's typically, if you look at his career, he's 10, 6th, number 6, number 2, number 4, number 16, number 11, and fell to 28. So you see the descent, but that's still good. That's still, a good tight end, 22nd in receiving grade, 69th in run block grade of 83. He really fell.
Yeah, really had a bad year.
From that perspective. And that's what the Eagles need. Now you could piecemeal it like you draft let's say Eli Stowers, because you don't want to go tight end at 23. So if he falls to the second round pick, you got a receiving tight end, tremendous athlete, great vertical leap, better athlete than Kenyon Sadiq, if you believe the real athletic scores. And then I brought up Charlie Kohler as a blocking tight end in Baltimore as a free agent. Maybe you sign him. you'd need to give him a little bit more money, and the Eagles don't have a ton of money to spend. But just an example of how you could do it. And you have the great blocking tight end, the big time upside as a receiving tight end. All of a sudden you're cooking with gas. But the best case scenario would be George Kittle. But the point is they need somebody who can set the edge in this running game at tight end. And they didn't have it last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, John, what they end up doing here. I'm looking at the free agent list of tight ends. We went through this before. Any names to you that look like a fit for the Eagles that, it's a tough needle to thread because it's got to be the right cost. It's got to be the right age. It's got to be the right style, all these different things. Any tight end free agents stick out to you? I mean, you got a lot of older tight ends out there. You got David Njoku, who's just about 30 years old. Noah Fant, Foster Moreau, Zach Ertz is out there. He's pretty old. Kylan Granson, as you talked about, an Eagle player. Not that many young tight ends out there. Now, I don't know if they need young. Maybe they'd look for 28, 29 years old. There are a couple options there. But anybody stick out from that list, John, that you think the Eagles could target?
Well, I just mentioned him, Charlie Kolar, man. He's one of the few guys who can legitimately, he's like more of an athletic tackle. He's not going to, but, he's got sure hands too. He's not going to be a volume guy, but he's only 27. He's a blocker. I always say, everybody's looking at Baltimore for tight ends because they always have great tight ends, and they do, but they all want Isaiah Likely because he's the receiver. Well, the Eagles want the blocker. So I'm going after Charlie Kolar. That's his job. That's how he does it. A lot of people have, put 2 and 2 together with John Fitzpatrick, but he's coming off an injury, same type of thing. I think you look at the blocking guys who are going to be cheaper. They don't make nearly as much money. So somebody like Kolar, he's still young. That's going to be a couple of years ago, Josh Oliver. That's what happened. He might be the best blocking tight end in football. He came from Baltimore, and he got a big deal. Now, the Eagles probably can't spend that kind of money. I don't think Kolar's as good as Oliver, but really good blocking tight end. If somehow they could pull that off, I think that would be a very good signing. That wouldn't excite many people, but it would be very, very important for what they want to accomplish on offense.
And what do you think a player like him would, the Spotrac market value on Charlie Kolar right now is $1.7 million. If our guy JD3 is in here, I think I see him. Spotrac list, John, they list comparable players under everybody. Well, the first player under the comparable players for Charlie Kolar is Harrison Bryant. Look at that. Harrison Bryant, that name is returned to Birds 365. What do you think Charlie Kolar, John, is worth in the open market?
Well, I think that that's a terrible comp because Harrison's not nearly. This guy's 6'6", 265-ish. I mean, this guy's huge. He's a couple meals away from being a tackle.
They know the comp is more of a contract, so it's not really
contract wise. It's contract. He might not make a lot of money, but that's why I bring in Josh Oliver. Like, there's some smart teams who might give him 3 years, 9-10 million, and then you start talking about. So I think that's a little bit low, but I think Spotrac's been low on everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit low. But you're not going to have to break the bank for the guy because he's.
What do you think of a guy like Isaiah Likely?
He's a receiver. He's a great receiver, but that's what I'm not picking on you, but everybody just draws. Look, it's easier to find a receiver than a blocker. And I know nobody cares about the blocker, but that's what the Eagles need. Like, they can piecemeal it together with the receivers. They'll be fine with the receivers. He's going to be too expensive for the Eagles, Isaiah Likely. They're not going to be in that realm. But he's obviously the bigger name. He's a very good player. He'd be, an upgrade. as a receiving tight end, but I think they want to go more cost effective and probably go the draft to find that guy because it's a deep draft for tight ends. We'll see what Ian says about that. But you have Sadiq. You're probably not going to take him. You have Max Clare. You might take him. Eli Stowers, and even if you don't get those guys, you're down to the Michael Triggs of the world, who can also help. So there's quite a few guys, and Oscar Delp is one we mentioned. Eli Raritan's more of a blocker, but you could piece it together. Justin Jolie from North Carolina State, Sam Roush from Sam. There's a lot of decent tight ends, and I think you could piecemeal it together with the receiving aspect. But it's really hard to find blocking guys because nobody asked them to block anymore.
Yeah, right.
And they were just a disaster last year when it came to run blocking at the tight end position.
Yeah, Howie is pretty open about he's always liked the pass catching tight ends. But you are right. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't need one that's more versatile than that. We're going to see what they're going to end up doing, John. I will say it just doesn't give me a lot of confidence to move on from Goedert. And then I'll just throw it in there for the sake of the convo. If AJ were to be traded, which I still am not sold that he's going to be, but I get all the noise and the rumblings and where there's smoke, there's fire talk. So I understand that. But boy, if those two guys go, John, I mean, you're making life hard on Sean Mannion. And first year coordinator coming in with these great expectations, and you're taking away two of the better pass catchers on the football team. I mean, I don't know. That to me doesn't seem like a move for a team that wants to contend for a Super Bowl, to replace him with Charlie Kohler and a draft pick. I get it. Sometimes you got to get cheaper, but geesh, I don't know, John.
Well, you're talking about two, and AJ's in a different category than Dallas. I mean, AJ's still, in theory, in the prime of his career, and obviously a potential all-pro level player. I do think Dallas is clearly descending. He's going to be 32 by the end of the season. That means he's going to be 33 next season. So, I would argue that they should have been way ahead of this plan to replace him 2 years ago. Never mind last year. So that's one of the rare, I think, miscues of Howie Roseman. But he's a descending player. He's done a lot for the organization. But do you think that descent I just talked about, do you think that's going to reverse gear in his age 31 season where he's
no, I don't, but I do wonder if your replacement strategy is going to even be able to hold a candle to what you had in that type of player. I know he's not what he once was, but he still might be better than all the other options you have. Now,
well, that's a possibility, and that's why I think he might be back on a 1-year deal, but it's got to be like 1 year, $7-8 million. That's it, which is unlikely that you're be able to get him back at that rate. That's why people think he's out. He's probably out. We'll see. But yeah, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world at this stage because the Eagles haven't prepared for it to get him back. I'm not arguing that. But then the aspect, look, Jeremiah is the one who said Maxx Clare is like Sam Laporta. I go, well, if you got him in the I'll sign up for that right now. Now, that's a lot to put on that player. But I mean, it happens. I would have said the same thing about Sam Laporta when he was coming in. I said, what, really? They're going to count on a second round pick to pick up for TJ Hawkinson, who was really good before he got, some of the injuries started piling up. I said the same thing about that. And all of a sudden, TJ's descending in his career, could be cut, could be a salary cap casualty. And Sam Laporta is one of the best tight ends in football. Now he got hurt, so we'll see what that injury is. But I mean, that worked like right away. I mean, right away, year one. Guy's been phenomenal. So, I mean, it does happen. Just looking up his rookie season, 86 catches, 10 touchdowns as a rookie.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, obviously, you had the two guys in the round one last year, too. Loveland and Warren. But
that's one of the great drafts, by the way. The Detroit draft, the 23 Detroit draft.
Yeah, that's a hell of a draft.
Yeah, and the two guys last year were, I think, ahead of even Sadiq.
Yeah, I mean, my gripe with Sadiq is I think he's a great player, great athlete, but he's got like 800 career college yards, John. I mean, he had like 500 yards last year. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have a great opportunity to be a great football player or in the NFL. That's not my point. My point is, man, that's a big projection for not a lot of production for a player to take him in round one as a tight end. That's
fair, and I don't think the Eagles would take him, to be honest, in the first round. But you're right. I mean, people are going to be enamored with his athleticism, and can he play football? I think is the more important question. But the other guys, they're more second round conversation, but they have a chance to be. And again, I only bring up Maxx because that was Jeremiah's quote on his conference call with us. Sam Laporta-ish. I'm like, all right, I'll take that. But it's got to get to you. Number one, he might not even fall to the Eagles in the second round. And then Eli Stowers is more of a tremendous athlete, which might take some time to translate. And you might really have a like Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. Now Kyle was obviously really high draft pick, but it took him a while.
Yeah. They tagged him, right? They franchise tagged him.
Yeah. So by the way, today's the deadline for the franchise transition tags. The Eagles will not use it again.
Yeah, which we all know.
Yeah.
But the ones we predicted happened, right? George Pickens got tagged.
Kyle, there were only two last year. So far, there's been two. There's a chance. There's a couple other guys, but then teams have gotten smart to that. Players are never happy when you tag them, so it doesn't. The Cowboys are nuts, so I mean they're kind of an outlier. And sometimes when you can't get something done, you have to use it as a placeholder. But nobody wants to play under that 1 year albatross. So teams have gotten smarter. Don't use it that often.
Yeah, we're going to see what ends up happening with the NFL draft set to come up here in, what is it, John? End of April, I believe it is. April 23rd, is it? NFL draft.
It's late April.
Yeah, April 23rd it starts. So Thursday, April 23rd through Saturday, April 25th will be the NFL draft. We'll be covering it right here on JAKIB Sports. So make sure you guys lock in during the NFL draft. We'll have good extensive coverage for you guys. And I'll be live probably for the full thing. I'll bring Johnny Mack in after picks and stuff. And we'll have great draft coverage for everybody. So make sure you guys stay tuned on the JAKIB channel. I do want to thank everybody for being here this morning. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to drop your comments down below. All super chats go to the top. We appreciate everybody for supporting the show today. In hour number 2, we're going to talk to Ian Cummings, all right, a great draft guy for Pro Football Network. So we're going to looking forward to talking to Ian Cummings and seeing what he has to say about the NFL draft this year. It's always good talking to Ian. He's got a great feel for the NFL draft. Anybody who's listened to our segments in the past with him knows that. So looking forward to that here coming up. John, free agency now less than a week. Well, it's a little more than a week away, but the legal negotiating period is now under a week away. So a lot of news is set to hit, John, in the next week for the Eagles. Who do you think, what domino you think falls first when it comes to free agency, John? You got the Jaylen Phillips thing. I put out a poll last night on the JAKIB Sports channel, John. What's the number one priority for the Eagles? And I wanted to gauge, kind of what the viewers thought. 68% voted re-signing Jaylen Phillips. That's over trading A.J. Brown, Goedert, all these other things. So re-signing Jaylen Phillips seems to be a priority also for a good majority of the fan base. I don't know if it'll happen, but we will see. What pin you think falls first?
Well, I mean that the timing doesn't matter, but the priority is Jaylen Phillips. I mean, that's you didn't need a poll. It's good that the fans have picked up on that, but that's the priority of the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's their number one goal. How quick it happens, it's going to happen pretty quickly, as I said yesterday. I mean, by March 11th, you're going to know where Jaylen Phillips is going to be. Now, does that mean first 2 minutes? The Eagles are probably trying to, not probably, the Eagles are trying to get it done right now before free agency starts.
Right.
My guess is Jaylen Phillips is going to want to see what the market will bear, because the market might bear a hell of a lot more than people think.
Yeah.
So that's my own guess, is he'll want to see what's out there. And then if he gets the monster deal, somewhere between 25 30 million, say, then, you're hopeful that he comes back to the Eagles. I think he will. And then it's a Howie Roseman decision. And there'll be a walkaway number. We don't know what that is. But certainly 30 would, I think the Eagles wouldn't get involved at that level. 25-ish, I think that might be the ceiling. But they definitely, I'm glad the fans picked up on that, because there's no debate about it. I mean, that's not me speculating. Their priority is re-signing Jaylen Phillips. And if they can't get it done, they got to toggle pretty quickly. And I'm sure that's what he does best, is those contingencies. And some of the other guys, who, would be cheaper. I mentioned.
How about a more expensive guy, John? I saw from Albert Pereira, credible reporter, puts out, we should know soon enough which path the Raiders are taking, with teams like Dallas, Chicago, Baltimore, Buffalo, New England, and Philadelphia, and the Rams keeping tabs on his availability. So that's the first sign I've seen of them actually maybe being in the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes.
Yeah, I think that would be too expensive for the Eagles, but, I haven't gotten the feeling that they think about him the same way as they think about, Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons, players I think they would have gone overboard with. That's just, I just haven't heard the name. Now, part of that could be they don't play the Raiders a lot. They don't deal with the Raiders a lot. Cleveland's been here numerous times, and the Eagles have gone out to Cleveland in training camp for joint practices. Vegas is so far away. You don't have that familiarity. Although Brandon Hunt's there, Anthony Patch is there, John Spytek is there, all former Howie employees.
Yep.
Boy, he's going to be really expensive in both ways, not only literally from the contract standpoint, but from the assets you have to give. This is not a free agent. I think that would change it. So I think that's very unlikely. And I think, you sort of go from, I mentioned Kwity Paye yesterday, the Penn State kid from the Chargers. Those are probably, but there's talk they might franchise him, by the way, which I find hard to believe. But, when we only have till 4:00 today for that to come down. But I think you're at that second level on the free agent market, which isn't that deep. And one of the reasons why Jaylen Phillips, a lot of people think he's going to get a lot of money, because it's not a deep group as a whole, but certainly on the edge. Most of the big name edge guys are, Trey Hendrickson is 32, Khalil Mack is 35, Hassan Reddick is 32, Joey Bosa is 31, Leonard Floyd's 34. That's typically not where the Eagles want to do. Now, if it comes down to it and you have to sign somebody to a 1-year deal, maybe, but Kwity Paye is 28. He's a guy. Adopi Owa is 28. So those are guys that could be answers for multiple years, but it's not a deep group when you're talking about, multi-year answers to the issue. So yeah, I mean, if they don't get Jaylen Phillips, make no mistake, that is not for a lack of trying.
Yeah, well, we'll see what ends up happening. John, how much do you put into this line of thinking? I'm going to go to one of our viewers here. I think this is a good thought process, or at least something worth considering here. Here's Brian Fleming. What's up, Brian? He says this: Fangio is leaving. Spending $25 million on a guy that is catered toward a DC that's departing doesn't make sense. And then he says this: let's say they bring in Schwartz. He's not going to want a guy dropping back in coverage or an edge setter. He'd want a Maxx Crosby type. Now, I'm not saying they're going to sign a guy directly tailored for Schwartz or that style, but I do think it's a fair thought process. Vic was contemplating retirement this offseason. If you just say, okay, Vic's got 1 year left, does that change maybe the evaluation and the thought process on giving Jaylen Phillips a multi-year contract that keeps him in Philly for a long time? How do you think the Eagles see that? And then also, how do you see that part of it?
Well, I think catering is too strong of a word. I think that's an advantage they have with Jaylen Phillips because he's played his best football under Vic Fangio, but he's been very good without Vic Fangio as well. He's just a good football player. So I think that part of it, but to Howie's point when he was talking about the offensive line, when he was talking to us, and he said, are we going to change our philosophy now that Jeff Stoutland isn't here? He said maybe a click. And, but you can't worry about 2027. There's good and bad to having Vic Fangio. The good is pretty obvious. The bad is his age, and he's thinking about retiring every year. But he might not retire. And yeah, if he does retire, Jim Schwartz would be at the top of the list. As he seems like he's going to take this season off. And it is, maybe Maxx Crosby is a better fit a little bit for Jim Schwartz is just going to play a lot of wide nine. Maybe that's the case, but you don't do that with 1 year in advance. And they just believe Jaylen Phillips is really good. And I would argue, and I've said argue from a well-rounded perspective, and the drop stuff, forget about the drop stuff. That's so overrated. When it works, like with Alex Hunt, people get excited about it. It's a handful of plays. It's a curveball. It's like a fastball pitcher, but he needs a curveball because you can't throw out there and you can't throw. Well, nobody throws 100 pitches. What do they throw? 80 pitches now. You can't throw 75 fastballs. They'll just sit on it. You got to throw a curveball. That's what Vic does. It really goes back to Dom Capers. You're trying to fool the quarterback. They're assuming the guy's right. You drop him, and hopefully he doesn't see him, and he throws it right to him like it happened with Alex Hunt a couple of times last season. That's it. It's a curveball. People overrate it to a ludicrous degree. They just think Jaylen Phillips is a really, really good football player. Not about he's really good because he's with Vic Fangio. He's going to be really good with anybody. That's their philosophy. That's their belief in Jaylen Phillips.
Well, I do think it's still relevant to consider, what the future holds. And I don't know. Do you think he's that good? I mean, I think he's a great player, but
I was stunned how good he was. Two things stunned me about Jaylen Phillips. One, how big he is. It's just, man.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
He's impressive physically. You could see why he was a top tier draft pick. And then second, how well rounded he was. He can rush the passer, he can set the edge, he can defend the run, he can move inside. Very versatile. Which to me is an advantage over Maxx Crosby, because Max is very good at what he does, but he's not nearly as versatile. Now, that's not going to resonate with people. Same thing with tight ends we're talking about. Well, Dallas had 13 touchdowns, and he had his worst run blocking season as a pro. What helped more, and what affected the Eagles' offense more? I would argue the fact they couldn't block on the edge overwrought what he did, and he had a great season from a touchdown perspective. Same thing with Jalen. But people want sacks. Maxx Crosby's a proven, demonstrated closer. You know, to keep using the Jim Schwartz baseball analogies, what would you rather have? The great starting pitcher who can do everything, or the closer? Well, when it's the ninth inning of a 3-2 game, you want the closer. But to get to the 3-2 game, you need the starter. So pick your poison. I'd rather have the well-rounded guy, but that's me. I get people, want the 15 sack guy. I get it, but I'd rather have the well-rounded player.
Yeah, well, it's fair. If you have the well-rounded starter and the closer blows it, it's not going to work. But if you don't have the good starter, you're not going to have a chance to close it anyway. So it's kind of a what comes first there type of conversation. John, interesting stuff with Phillips. I think that's obviously the big one, as you've talked about here. But I'm not quite as sold on him as you, especially if you're talking about 25 million plus. But I don't see much of a better option out there. And I'm not really in the camp of trading multiple picks to get Maxx Crosby and pay him $30 million. I'm not that infatuated with that. So you need an edge. Boy, if he goes too and Goedert goes, oh man. I'm gonna John, I'm gonna start wondering whether this team's contending at all next year, man, if that happens.
Well, different categories. Like one's going to be really expensive and one isn't, I don't think. But it's a question of I think if Dallas gets 2 years somewhere, he's gone. And I think he'll get 2 years somewhere. Jaylen Phillips is just, Jaylen Phillips is going to be third round compensatory pick level contract. So different sort of worlds from the financial perspective. And that's, about age and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, look, they were, they'd be back right where they were last year before they got Jaylen Phillips, and trying to figure out, let's talk to Darius Smith, into it, and then he retires, and let's bring Brandon Graham back. And maybe you do say, hey, let's bring Khalil Mack in for 1 year because he had success with Vic. That's the mode you'd be in. Let's bring in Joey Bosa at 31, although he would never come here. He hates it here. You're not going to bring Hassan back. Let's bring in 34-year-old Leonard Floyd. He can rush the passer. That's where you're at.
Chubb.
Or Chubb, yeah, Chubb. Chubb's another one.
He's been with Vic. I mean, knows obviously Vic's scheme, and he's not as old as I thought. I originally thought Chubb was in his 30s. I'm pretty sure he's like 29, something like that.
Yeah, he'd be another guy, similar.
29. He'll be 30 in June, so he'll be 30 for the year.
Probably a little bit too expensive, I would think. He'd be more expensive. I'd probably want to go 1 year if I'm at that stage.
When you say expensive, where are you talking? Like 18 million, or you think more than that?
No, 15 to 20. And I probably don't want to be in that business at that stage. Like I said, the Eagles haven't, spent in that middle class category. That's probably upper middle class. And I don't know, because he's had some significant injury history as well. I don't know what his market would be, but to your point about age, he got to the league young as well. So he's played a lot of football. 2018. And now because of COVID and all that, you see guys coming in at 25, 26, and you're like, wow, that guy's old to be an NFL player. Well, before COVID, guys would come in really young, and then you would say, well, they're not that old, but they got a lot of tread off the tire because they played so much football. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons where he's been injured and missed significant time. And 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons where he's played, including last year. So he was healthy last year, but he didn't play at all in 2024. So, difficult decision, but you can throw him in the mix. But the Eagles don't want to be in that mix. They want to get things done with Jaylen Phillips.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they end up doing there. It's going to be interesting to see how that room pans out and what they end up doing there. John, let's keep rolling here on some of the updates we got yesterday. Another feather in your cap, John. Anybody who's been listening to Birds 365 for the last week, longer, but specifically the last week, you've already heard this before. But regarding A.J. Brown, we're not going to talk too much about A.J. Brown, but I do want to talk about that position as a whole. Also in Matthew Berry's report of things that he heard at the NFL Combine was how much the Eagles love Devonta Smith. And John, you've been mentioning this for the last week, how high the Eagles are on Devonta Smith. He wrote this: one thought around Brown possibly leaving that I hadn't heard before was that the Eagles love Devonta Smith in all caps. They think as good as he's been in the NFL, he still hasn't reached his full potential and has another gear he can get to. That if Smith were given the same kind of target share as Jackson Smith and Jigba, he could have that kind of year. They believe in his talent that much, and that's among the many reasons they would be okay with moving Brown. So a pretty big stamp of approval there for Devonta Smith, as Matthew Berry heard from the NFL Combine. It's something you've talked about, John, now for well over a week here on the show. What do you make of that, and what's the John McMullen opinion of that? Do you think Devonta Smith is capable of, not only that type of production, but that type of workload, that type of, focus and attention from a defense? And do you think the Eagles are, hey, maybe they're better positioned to move AJ than we originally thought with a guy like Devonta Smith in the fold? How do you see it, John?
Well, I say welcome to 7 days ago, but no, I'm not picking. I'm glad that Matthew, I need a better publicist. I'm glad that Matthew put it out there because, I even made the Smith and Jigba comparison, because of what happened in DK Metcalf. And it's so, they do believe in him. They do believe he's a wide receiver one if he's in that position. Now, personally, I still have concerns. You're talking about 150 targets, and Devontae's a small guy. Now, he has proven to be very durable. And some of those things we worried about in the draft haven't come to fruition with his lack of size. And he's very powerful for his size, very wiry. He's like built out of, I don't know, metal almost. Yeah. So he's very strong for size. But you've seen him take some hits where they look pretty ugly. And the more targets you get, the more opportunities there are to get banged up. So I'm a little bit concerned that he could handle the traffic. But as a player, he can do everything. He is phenomenal. He's a great route runner, can play outside, can play inside. Tremendous hands, goes up over the top, can moss people despite the fact he's only 6 feet tall. He does have
tremendous, man. The body control of Devonta Smith is freaking exceptional.
He can do anything on the football field as a receiver. And you saw that he won the Heisman Trophy. He's a phenomenal player. The traffic would be the one thing I'd be concerned about. And in theory, that would be only increase. So you're talking about 150, 160, maybe 170 targets if you're the guy. Little bit and that's personal. That's not from the Eagles. That's a personal concern. But great player. I do think that he's already great, and he's already had. I don't know. I got to look it up, but he set the franchise before AJ got here. He set the franchise record for rookie receiving yards. And then after AJ got here, he said, I believe three 1,000-yard seasons. And the one he didn't have was because he was hurt for 3-4 games, whatever it was. So he's already obviously tremendously productive, tremendously good player. But I do think there would be more recognition that people go, wow, he's really good. Because right now he's, the wide receiver too, even though it's more like 1A, 1B. But he's a great player, as Eagles fans know by now.
Yeah, he is a great player. I think it is a different beast though, John, when you get into, you become the number one. And then you have to consider this, John, as well, something we talked about earlier in today's show. If Goedert is gone as well, and AJ would be gone in this scenario where Devonta becomes the number one, that's a lot on Devonta. Like, I think he's a great player. I'm with you. I'm not saying he's not a great player, but that feels like a lot to ask of any receiver, to be able to carry that type of load. Now, I'm just projecting, but I don't know. You have Maxx Crosby and Devonta Smith, and I don't know who their wide receiver 2 would be at that point. Another guy that Matthew Berry mentioned that the Eagles could be interested in if AJ went was Mike Evans. You pushed back on me when I mentioned the Mike Evans name a week ago, but that was in there as well, that the Eagles could be interested in Mike Evans. Maybe that's not a bad 2 for a year or two, but how do you see that? I mean, look, Devonta's a great player, but that's a big burden for a team trying to contend for a Super Bowl, John. Remember, that's the lens I'm seeing it through. Not that you're trying to be a good team, that you're trying to compete for Super Bowls, that you're trying to be one of the 5-6 teams that you always say that has a legitimate shot to win it. Does Devonta Smith as your number one put you in that or keep you in that conversation?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd rather have Devonta Smith as my number one than Mike Evans at 33. And again, I don't, people will hear that similar to Jalen. I'd rather have Jaylen Phillips over Maxx Crosby. I'm not an Eagles fan. I just think it makes more sense. One of my concerns about Maxx Crosby is just how much football he's played. He's guys who never leaves the field. And that's awesome. That's generally, but there's a give and take to that. It's awesome, but look what, it's one of my concerns with Jalen Carter here. And all the shoulder issues he's had. But yeah, I mean, Mike Evans is going to the Hall of Fame. I'm not dismissing his legacy, but he's 33. Is Devonta Smith going at the Hall of Fame? Well, he might if he continues to go on at a heavy lift, but he's certainly not there yet. But he's in the prime of his career. He can do everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Why would you even have that discussion?
Well, who do you think would be a good compliment to Smith to Smitty as a wide receiver too? And what route do you think they'd go? Would they go draft? Would they look free agent? Would they look to trade? I mean, how do you see it if this AJ saga that's never ending, if it did result in AJ being gone, what route do you think the Eagles would take to replace the wide receiver? I don't think they're going to roll in with Darius Cooper as your wide receiver too. I mean, Jahan Dotson's not under contract. How do you see it?
Well, that's an indication where, and I don't know where Jahan is. Like I said, he said some nice things about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, so maybe he would entertain coming back. If AJ wasn't here and he was clearly going to get more opportunities. But as I said in the draft, if you lose AJ Brown, things change. Obviously, you're not even considering a wide receiver in probably a slight chance you're looking for a slot guy like in the 3rd round, slight chance. But I doubt even that. You probably start thinking about it in day 3 if AJ's back. If AJ's not back, well, that automatically gets him back. You're thinking about wide receiver on day 1 and day 2. And there's a ton, like I said, there is a ton of wide receivers because that's all colleges are developing. I mean, there are a crap load of wide receivers to bind and develop. Now, they're not going to be A.J. Brown as rookies, similar to what we discussed about with the tight ends. But that doesn't mean you can't get competency. And actually, if you can't get competency in the first 2 rounds at wide receiver, well, you're doing a bad job drafting. And, it's a give and take. The Eagles have been tremendous drafting over the past since 2021. Before 2021, which was Devonta's year, they struggled to find receivers. But that's, it has changed that greatly. That's a short amount of time. But I went through the list. I remember going through the list a couple weeks ago, just how many contributors there were out of last year's draft class. There are so many receivers. They are producing so many receivers at the college level. So, and I'm just looking at Sports Info Solutions, and I'll also try to get Matt Manacharian on. So here's what they have in the top 100. Top 100 players. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 wide receivers. 17. From Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Chris Brazil, Denzel Boston, Mekhi Lemon, Zachariah Branch. You look at him, he's a Georgia guy, can play the slot, can run. Jacoby Lane, Omar Cooper Jr., a lot of hype about him being a first-round pick. Keep an eye on Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana if you're watching the college football playoffs. Casey Concepcion, who I love.
Yeah, I like him too.
Chris Bell from Louisville. Skylar Bell from UConn. Jeremy Bernard, one of your guys from Alabama. Brendan Thompson from Mississippi State. Malachi Beals, if you're looking for the big body, from Notre Dame. Elijah Sarrett, the other Indiana guy, another big body. Bryce Lance from North Dakota State, Trey Lance's brother who can fly. Kevin Coleman from Mizzou. So we're going to make our guy. Who's our Mizzou guy? He cracked the top 100, Kevin Coleman. Boy, you got to be able to find a contributor in that group. So, you're not going to replace A.J. Brown from a production standpoint, from a play standpoint. He's one of the best receivers I would argue the best receiver in Eagles history. And yeah, I know longevity plays into it. I know Tommy McDonald's in the Hall of Fame. I know Harold Carmichael's in the Hall of Fame. I'm telling you, A.J. Brown is the best receiver that has ever played for the Philadelphia Eagles. You're not replacing that. But you can win in different ways, and you can do things differently. And if you all of a sudden have 3 competent receivers instead of 2, and you have a better feel for it, and you have a better scheme, and you're moving the football around, you might have a better end result. So you can't think about it as, well, you got to replace A.J. Brown, because you're not going to replace A.J. Brown. That, if you're moving on from him, that is addition by subtraction, the definition of it. Because you're not happy with the off the field stuff and how it's impacting the team as a whole. And it's got nothing to do with on the field.
We'll see what ends up happening with that. I did think the report or the conversation about Devonta Smith, which you brought up over a week ago, John, is a relevant one. The Eagles are very high on Devonta Smith. And maybe that's an indication of what they're trying to do by putting that out there. So interesting stuff there. John, free agency looming. What other free agents do you think are relevant to the Eagles this year? I read a piece from Jimmy Kempski yesterday on phillyvoice.com. Jimmy does great work. And he just mocked up a couple guys that make sense for the Eagles. I think is how he worded it. 3 free agents who make sense for the Eagles. It was his 3.0 version. So he's done a couple of them. The 3 names he put were on yesterday's were Christian Kirk, wide receiver. Maybe if the thought process there would be if AJ goes. Evan Neal, offensive lineman from the Giants. Interesting. He was a very high draft pick. And then Jamari Salyer, I think you say it. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. 25-year-old offensive lineman from the Chargers. So 2 offensive linemen and a receiver there. It's not to say you got to talk about those names, but John, any other free agents that we haven't talked about that you think could be a fit for the Eagles? I don't think they're going to be huge players this year, but you got to build the roster. They got 21 of their own free agents, so they're going to have to replace some of these guys. Can't do it all in the draft. Who do you think makes sense for the Eagles on the free agent list?
Well, I mentioned one before. My top guy is Charlie Kohler. I'm all Charlie Kohlered up for what the Eagles need. The other guy I mentioned was and I did this for SI a couple days ago, was Kwity Paye. If you lose but that's only if you lose Jaylen Phillips. And then I went Jacksonville corner Monteric Brown. If you're looking for, a slight upgrade at cornerback 2 that you could bring in, probably on a 2-year, somewhat cost-effective deal. More middle class, but you can afford it. I like Monteric Brown. He's very long, very lengthy, not the fastest guy in the world, but the Eagles play so much zone, they can make up for it. And he's been productive in Jacksonville. So those are the 3 I chose. And it's mainly about fit, and they're not going to spend a lot of money. And the only one of those 3 that would cost significant money, Paye's going to get some decent money, but the Eagles have budgeted for edge defender because they know how much it's going to cost to get Phillips back. So, that money's already budgeted to that position, and you'd actually be getting a cheaper player in Kwity Paye if you have to force and change direction. So those are the 3 guys I talked about. What I can tell you is the Eagles are like everybody else, and they don't think it's a very deep free agency class. Howie's on record saying the way you build a team is draft well, sign your own, and supplement in free agency. So it's going to be very similar to last year that we dubbed here the Tamu offseason, which they probably don't like, but you might have 1 or 2 players that are a little bit, last year they didn't give anybody multiple years. This year they might give a couple guys, but certainly not drastic, certainly not high profile, more role players. And that's why I like Kohler and Monteric Brown specifically. And I think of all of them, and I will spike the football if they get him, it's Charlie Kohler, because to me, he's the perfect fit for what the Eagles want to do on offense.
And you think he'd be tight end 1?
No. Can't catch. I mean, right. Not high volume.
You're looking at it. You're looking at a secondary piece that would fit into the tight end room. That would give them.
He'd be the 12 personnel starter. He'd be the second tight end. But he's not. He has good hands. He'll catch the ball when you throw it to him, but he's not going to get open.
Right. He's not a pass catching tight end.
No. But I think you need that player. I think the Eagles and Howie also admitted, on the record, he's got to evolve at tight end. When he was talking about, he prefers what you brought up earlier. His history is he falls in love with receiving tight ends. He said, our improvement, and I'm paraphrasing, I'll get the quote, but he basically said that us improving there is about me evolving and opening my mind to having, more of the blocking style tight end. So he's aware as well that they need that for this offense to succeed.
Going to be interesting to see what they end up doing there, Johnny Mac, with everything going on the free agency front. I like some of your names there, John. Let's hit the Eagle news before we get to Ian Cumming. A couple pieces of news, not big, but I did get a couple things yesterday. Another coaching staff addition with a former Army assistant, Alan Smith. And then you mentioned it at the top of the show. They're bringing back defensive lineman Graham. Not to be confused with Brandon Graham. This is not Brandon Graham. This is Taquan Graham, defensive lineman. John, what's the latest on the Eagle news, man? What do you make of those 2 signings? I know you put up 2 articles about those 2 things as well yesterday.
Yeah, well, the coaching staff's getting deeper. I mean, they lost Rennell Williams to the Raiders. He got a promotion out there. He was the assistant linebackers coach for the Eagles and a quality control guy. Went to school at Westchester, local guy, coached at Temple. So good for him. He got a promotion out with some, as I mentioned, a lot of Eagles tint out in Las Vegas now. So they brought in Alan Smith, but what's interesting is, so Rennell kind of assisted Bobby King, which is the inside linebackers coach, and Alan Smith is going to be the assistant outside linebackers coach. So that's the edge defenders. That's the edge rushers, basically. And in theory, he would be helping Jeremiah Washburn. So a little bit of shift, and we're going to see the Eagles still haven't finalized their coaching staff, but it's going to be pretty deep, 25-ish. And, this is a new position in theory. So, an assistant, more of a lower level position, assistant position coach job. But we pride ourselves on telling you everything. So, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. But, probably you lose Rennell Williams, you bring in a new coach, and we'll see how it works out. And then Taquan Graham got here. He was in Atlanta for a long time as a rotational player. Believe he was a 5th round pick originally out of Texas, and he played there for 4+ seasons. Got cut in November last year, and the Eagles put him on the practice squad for the rest of the season. So he was here for about the last 10 games. Good dude. Played a lot of football. I think he's played 51 games. Probably wanted to look around to see if there was a better deal, and decided to come back to Philadelphia. Good depth piece. Nothing more than that. But, I would say the biggest positive is he can play inside and outside. It's always good when you have those guys. Similar to what I said about Jaylen Phillips, but Jalen obviously at a much higher level. He can play, anywhere from, 2-eye to outside to 7 technique. Probably you don't want him wide 9, but and it's always good if you need to have a body, and he can do a bunch of different things. So that's a valuable trait for a potential backup player. But the Eagles certainly are hoping to get more from Ty Robinson in year 2. So long shot to make the roster, but good depth.
Yeah, depth piece. Probably a practice squad player, maybe with a chance to make the roster, as John just pointed out. You mentioned Ty Robinson, John. You think he's going to have a better year this year? I mean, he's a rookie. I don't want to beat him up too much. I mean, defensive linemen take a while to develop in the league. That's just the reality of the situation. I mean, you saw it with Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. It's just a part of it. Yeah, it takes some time to get your feet under you, especially at that position. Ty Robinson didn't do much in year 1. You think he can contribute in year 2?
Yeah, I mean, you don't shut the door on Tyrod. I think a lot of Tyrod was, for whatever reason, because he had an interesting backstory. He's got an interesting nickname. He's got, he looks like a bodybuilder. He's got the huge biceps. People gravitated to him. He's a very smart guy, very accomplished guy. He's going to be a doctor. He played fullback at Nebraska, so people saw him scoring touchdowns. So I think, they resonated to him and thought, look at Moro Ojomo. He didn't play as a rookie. In year 2, he was a rotational player. In year 3, he took off. So yeah, I mean, he'll get every opportunity to be the rotational guy. Right now it's Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, and Byron Young. So they'll want Ty Robinson to push Byron Young and, potentially get up to that year 2 of where Moro was. That's your template. Now different. I'm not saying they're different styles of players. But I'm just talking from a playing playtime standpoint, that's what you want. He's a day 3 pick. You kind of sit and learn. Year 1, year 2, you turn into a rotational player, and who knows? Year 3, you might be a really big part of the equation. And yeah, I think people are being way too hard on Ty Robinson. I think, and that stems from the unrealistic expectations to begin with, which, he's a 4th round pick. Because he's got a cool nickname doesn't mean he's going to step in and, be a great player right away. Not to mention the fact, who's going to beat out Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis in the way Moro played last year? Right. So yeah, I thought the expectations were a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah, you said that early too. You were saying that to people when they were getting all high, and me included. So good stuff there, Johnny Mac. And we mentioned it yesterday, but for those who missed it, Moro Ojomo did pick up a new agent. So Moro Ojomo is looking for a big payday.
Well, Moro's going to get that. Moro's getting a big payday.
Oh yeah, he is.
Just a matter of where and how much.
Probably won't be Philly, considering Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are most likely getting contracts here. So probably not going to be Philly, but I'm happy for Moro Ojomo. I think he's a great dude, 7th round pick, smart guy, true professional, does his job and does it well, and I think has outlived where he was drafted. So I'm excited for more. I like to see players like that, John, earn their way to a big contract, similar to Milton. Now Milton was a 3rd round pick, but I always thought he was a great story, great family. I love the videos of kind of his mom and dad and the draft, when they watched him get drafted, stuff like that. So I thought that was a great story. I think Moro Ojomo will be next, John. I think he's going to get a big deal somewhere next year.
Yeah, I think he's going to get, if he plays like he did last year, even maintains what he did last year, he's going to get big money because they pay pass rushers, and he's a pass rusher.
20 mil?
Yeah. I mean, pass rushers get paid. And he's one of the best interior pass rushers in football. If you look at the advanced statistics and pressure and things like that, and those are the guys who get the big money. So, there'll be a little bit to overcome because, he was a 7th round pick and people will talk about he's undersized and all that. But when you can get to the passer, you're going to make a lot of money in this league from the interior, and he can get to the passer.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see with Moro Ojomo. So there you go. There's your updates lately from Eagle Land. The Taquan Graham signing, the ex-Army staffer Alan Smith been added to the coaching staff. John mentioned that's a big coaching staff, John. John, any concern with you on too many cooks in the kitchen this year?
I mean, everybody. Las Vegas just announced their whole coaching staff yesterday. It was 27 deep, I believe, and not including the strength staff. Like a lot of people include the strength staff now.
Kind of the new age, right? I mean, these teams are getting bigger. It's not, it used to be, John, back in the 90s and, before I was even, consuming this game. Coaching, you had like Jimmy Johnson. He was the GM. He was the coach. He was everything. So much different now in the NFL. I think the league has gotten so much bigger. They're like Fortune 500 companies now. They have a board. They got a coaching staff. They got a GM. They got 30 scouts. They got everything. So man, it's getting really big, which is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's definitely a change. How it once was.
No, it's like think of it like a school that has a small class to teacher ratio. Would you rather have one teacher for 40 kids or one teacher for 10 kids? That's sort of like the way coaching is going. You get more specialization, more time with the players. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing overall. But, I do think it's very hard to gauge that's the bad. Unfortunately, it's a public-facing industry, so people think they know. Like you talk to me every day. It's like I saw somebody and I don't want to pick on. I said like Gerard Johnson is going to be in, still to be determined what his role will be. And I said, well, he's going to be great with Jalen Hurts. And I'm like, well, why, he's not the quarterback's coach. Let's see what he does. I mean, um, I can't make that kind of convicted statement. I don't know what makes people think they can make these statements with such conviction, I guess, is my question. We're going to have to see how the Eagles handle this offensive shift. And there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And ultimately what we're being told, at least, is that Sean Mannion will be given the opportunity to run this thing, and everybody's going to help him. And if it changes from that, that's not a good thing at all. So you can look at it both ways. You can say, are they giving them a lot of help with guys with some, not a ton of experience? Everybody's young, but are they giving them a lot of help with Josh Grizzard and Jared Johnson, who are both, finalists for the offensive coordinator job? Yeah, on paper, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because like I said, now different when Sean Desai was here and all of a sudden you bring in Matt Patricia as this looming shadow. Now you don't have that type of guy who had that demonstrated history, but it's not necessarily a good thing. It indicates, well, maybe you don't have as much competence as you said you had in Sean Mannion. And I'm not trying to say that's the case. I'm trying to say other people will say, well, do you really have confidence in this guy if you're bringing in everybody you talk to be the offensive coordinator in the first place? Is this going to be co-offensive coordinators? What is it? Nobody knows right now.
We'll see. It's a good point by you, John. Here's a super chat. We have one super chat here we'll get to. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Don't forget to hit that like button. Ian Cummings coming up here on Birds 365. ODM says, A.J. Brown is so great. Ownership is forced to pick between him and Jalen Hurts. Not sure what to make of that comment.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that comment. I don't think ownership is choosing between them. There's been no, I presume, I'm just guessing, you can clarify. I presume you mean they are choosing Jalen Hurts over A.J. Brown? I don't think that's the case. I don't think that was made. I don't think A.J. said, get rid of Jalen Hurts and I'll come back. So I don't know what to make of that comment. I'm not sure. By the way, other than A.J. was frustrated about the offense. So who amongst the Eagles fans listening to this show was not frustrated by that offense?
It's a good question. It's a good question, John.
So, I mean, is it a surprise? Could he have handled it better? Sure. But who wasn't frustrated by this offense? And that would include Jalen Hurts, I would say. And I'm not going to bring it. You people who listen to the show, I by no stretch do I think it was Kevin Patullo's fault. I think everybody had their fingerprints on it. But everybody was frustrated. So to act like somebody being frustrated is strange. I mean, the only thing I think you can say with constructive criticism is that he could have handled it better. AJ.
Just to follow up, ODM followed up. I'm not sure what the comment meant exactly, but he said it's a dilemma we're having. Again, I'm not exactly sure what the follow-up there means, but we will see what ends up happening with it, John. A lot of stuff going on here in Eagle Land. Just under a week out now from the legal negotiating period. Just over a week out from free agency kicking off. And April 23rd, everybody, mark it on your calendar. That's day one of the NFL draft. What is that, John? 6 weeks away now? 6 weeks away? 7 weeks away?
Well, getting close. Yeah, everything's getting close.
No doubt. It's coming right up. And to do that, we got Ian Cummings here today, set to join us on Birds 365, one of the very best at covering the draft. If you've been listening to Birds 365 for multiple years, You've heard a lot of Ian Cummings on our show at draft season. He does it better than anybody else. He joins us right now here on Birds 365. You can follow him on X at IC_draft. Ian, good to see you, my friend. Happy 2026. Welcome back to Birds 365. How you doing today, my man?
Doing good. It's good to talk with you guys again. Anytime I'm talking with you, I know that we're on the ramp up to the NFL draft. Still free agency to go, but the combine just passed and a lot of new information there. So always fun to chop it up and ready to get going.
Yeah, happy draft season. Good to see you, Ian. I guess we'll start with the combine. I mean, I going into the combine, I got the feel talking, texting people around the league. This draft isn't that great at the top, and all of a sudden you get to Indy, and I think this happens every year.
Yeah,
this might be the most athletic class of all time. I mean, it's just athletes off the board everywhere. And now you come out of Indy and there's like 50 first-round picks. This guy's a first-round pick. This guy's a first-round pick. So we'll start there. Where's your feel about this draft as a whole? How good it is, how deep it is, the positions that are deep, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think my outlook for the class didn't change too much at the NFL Combine. I think one thing that people have been making note of, and I think it's an important observation and delineation to make, is that less of the players who aren't expected to test well are testing, right? You're seeing more of the players who are expected to run a 4.40, right? Or expected to jump at least 35 inches in the vertical, right? Like there's a little bit of selection bias going on where we aren't seeing as many players test at the NFL Combine if they don't have as much to gain as they have to lose, and they can just log a better time at their pro day too. So there's a little bit of selection bias, fewer volume, but the guys that we did see this year, right, the times were off the hook, especially for some positions like corner and safety and wide receiver. Linebacker was incredibly fast too. But I think what that is more representative of is the fact that because a lot of the top players didn't test either, right? Guys who, again, didn't have as much to gain if you're near the top of the board and you can run a faster time at your pro day. What I think the combine best exemplifies this year is that, and it's kind of what the conclusion that I came to before in the all-star cycle around then, this class is kind of shaped like a bell curve, right? You don't have a ton of bona fide blue chip talent at the top of the board, and you don't have a ton of bona fide first round talent either. Every time I do a mock draft, I get to around 24, 25, and you're having to reach into that slightly, round two graded pool a little bit to get some guys to fill that out. That said, I think this class is really, really deep in the middle round range. I think from round 2 even to middle round 4 and maybe even early round 5, I do think you can find starting talent in this class. It's a really, really, kind of thick class in the middle as far as that's concerned. And I think for a lot of NFL teams, that's going to be a good thing because I think you can find genuine starting talent in that range. But as far as guaranteed impact players early on in their careers, not quite as many of those. Or if there are they have questions like with Arvell Reese, it's the positional designation. It's going to be an off-ball or edge. With Ruben Bain, it's the arm length, right? With David Bailey, it's the run defense and a little bit of stiffness in his hips, right? So you have question marks with all these guys that are, traditionally billed as these top flight, top 10 picks. But I also think this class compensates with just the sheer volume of middle round talent. I think there's going to be plenty of gems to take advantage of.
Ian, we're going to get into some individual players, obviously, but how do you think that bodes for, trading in within the draft? Howie Roseman's traded in the first round 4 of the last 5 drafts, either gone up or down. Seems to me, based on what you just said, that people might be trying to move down. I mean, especially where the Eagles are at that 23 spot. How do you see their value there at 23 and maybe what the Eagles could try and do at that spot?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely leaned more toward trading down. I think a lot of the pipe dreams that you'd have the Eagles potentially taking in the NFL draft, like some of these higher end corners, or maybe Kenyon Sadiq was mocked there sometimes. We know the long-term outlook with Dallas Goedert. He might come back for 2026, but not sure beyond that. But now you have Sadiq running a 4.39 and jumping what he did in the vertical, right? And showing off that speed and that athleticism, like probably not making it there, right? So yeah. I'd be willing to wager a lot of these guys, these blue chip or near blue chip talents are getting pushed up the board. Maybe for the Eagles, you do have a player who fits your value proposition, right? And an offensive line could be an area for them to target too. But guys like Monroe Friedling probably moving up the board, right? You could get Caden Proctor, Blake Miller, but again, it depends on the valuation. So I would definitely lean toward the Eagles trading a little bit down, right? I think they're well outside the blue chip threshold. That said, if a first round talent does fall to them, I can see them taking it. Or if a player is falling into the mid-teens, maybe make an aggressive move up. But I think the Eagles have enough needs where you want to play the value of the board. We know Howie Roseman has always been good at that. I think this class in particular, if you aren't sold on a guy in round 1 range, again, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to get potential role players or really quality gems in the middle rounds. So if you can get more dart throws in that range, I think that will behoove you more. So I would lean trading down. I think opportunity might be there to trade up, but there's less volume to trade up for, and there will be teams who will be aggressive if certain prospects fall.
All right, I'm going to be a top grader here, and I want Ian Cummings' thought. I got 2 blue chip players, and one of them's a running back. Which I don't like to do, but I am in love with Jeremiah Love as a prospect. I think he's just phenomenal. And then the other one I have, and now I hear there's some medical concerns, and that's Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State. So that's it for me. Those are the 2 best players in the draft. Who are the best players in the draft according to Ian Cummings?
Caleb Downs is definitely up there. And I think as far as the medicals are concerned, it's different for every team. Corey Kinnan had a great report come from the combine citing that, he was flagged with a partially torn meniscus and a potentially degenerative ACL, right? Now there's a clarification that needs to be made with any medical check. It doesn't proliferate what happens in the pros, right? Like you can have a flagged medical evaluation, but then go on to have a healthy career. You can have a spotless medical check and go on to get really bad injury luck in the pros. So, there is a level of entropy that comes with it. I do think though with Caleb Downs, it's worth noting for a few separate factors, right? One, the positional value of the safety position, right? Time and time again, we see these safeties who are billed as can't miss prospects and they fall down the board because teams just don't value that position quite as much. Do I agree with that assessment? Not particularly. I think having a safety blanket on the back end like Caleb Downs who can play split field to single high in the box as a rover, even some big nickel reps against tight ends. I think having that kind of chess piece can be extremely valuable, right? But teams just don't share that sentiment, it seems, with their actions, right? Kyle Hamilton obviously fell to the teens when he was viewed as a blue chip prospect. So, and then you throw in the fact that Caleb Downs is around average size. He's probably not going to test as an elite athlete at the pro day. I think he's got very good with coverage mobility, but not quite the size speed freak that we've seen elevated when it is the safety going pretty early. And then on top of that, the medical red flags, or not red flags, but the medical question mark, I'll say, into that factor too. You could see him potentially, and then also another one, Dylan Thineman from Oregon, testing the way that he did at the NFL Combine. That's safety too. That's another first-round prospect. There's an outcome where Thineman goes above Downs if teams are scared enough of the medical issue. Film-wise, I agree with you. He's a top 2 prospect in the class. His football IQ is through the roof. I think he has the functional coverage mobility. He's got the targeted physicality and run defense. And when opportunities come his way, he can make plays at the catch point. But there are a lot of elements of uncertainty clouding over his profile. Jeremiah Love is up there for me. He's a top 10 prospect on my board, 6 foot, over 210, running the way that he did. It was just a verification of what we've seen on the film, right? Elite explosion, elite long speed, but also he sizes up really well with physicality. I think he's very good at playing with tenacity in contact situations, driving forward through defenders. And then at the end of the day too, he's very proficient at creating space and capitalizing behind the line of scrimmage, right? My favorite, the way that I word it, he's a really proficient toggle and throttle runner, right? Where he can toggle a little bit behind the line of scrimmage to press linebackers outside of gaps and then just divert upfield and capitalize. And he's got that game breaking speed where if you give him an angle, he's going to just obliterate your tackling angle, your pursuit angle, and he's going to get upfield. And then he's got the agility, the creative ability too. So he actually has a higher grade on my board than Ashton Jeanty did have last cycle. So it's a representation of how good he is. That said, there is one more prospect in the top 3 blue chip range for me, and that's Sonny Styles, linebacker out of Ohio State. And the way that he tested is, again, verification of he's the real deal physically and mentally. 6'5", 244, near 33-inch arms, ran a 4.46, 43.5-inch vertical, which is certifiably insane. And it's unbelievable, man. And the worst metric was like an over 7.3 cone, which was still in the 70th percentile, right? So he's a freakish athlete, a former safety, and it shows on the film. But also, I think his mental game is just as strong as his physical game, which is scary. I mean, he's an elite processor. He's so good at reading gaps and staying square to his assignments. And then he's got the size and the strength and the power and the explosion to really just launch into contact, fully stack and shed, make tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He's got depth discipline, as you would expect from a former safety, in coverage. And then he had 6 sacks in 2024, rushing the passer as a blitzer. He's got really good efficiency in that phase too. So I know off-ball linebacker, like safety, is another position that gets hit with the, positional value designation. What do we do with this? But when a player is as dynamic, as versatile, and just as good straight up as Sonny Styles, it's really difficult to pass on them in that range. So, looking at how well he checks the boxes, he's another one right up there.
Yeah. Well, all three guys are at positions: running back, safety, weak side linebacker, where generally, they're not going to take you at the top of the draft. So we'll see how that affects the top. Obviously, we know Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1 overall. After that, are there any quarterbacks worthy in your mind of going in the first round?
Right now, I would say no. But I think Ty Simpson has scarcity on his side. We see scarcity elevate QB prospects every single year, right? Jackson Dart, you can look at
JJ McCarthy, man.
JJ McCarthy, exactly, right? It's like, and Kenny Pickett going back a few years, going for round 1 when a lot of people had day 2 grades at most. I had a day 2 grade on Dart. He's been really good early in his career, but again, there was a little bit of elevation factor there too. But yeah, scarcity is really powerful when it comes to QBs, because QBs, by and large, by far the most valuable position. I think there's a consensus agreement on that. If you don't have a QB, then you can't compete. Or, we know that there have been some flashes in the pans. The Eagles with Nick Foles winning the Super Bowl, prime example, right? But
you're going to get in trouble, Ian. But you're 100% correct. But here you're going to get in trouble.
Here's the thing, though.
Correct.
It's possible, right? But is it the most sustainable method of success? No. By and large, you need a QB, right, who can elevate your team, at the very least keep you competitive. And I think Fernando Mendoza is that caliber of QB. He's not quite at the level of Drake May or Caleb Williams for me, but he would grade around the range that Jaden Daniels graded for me. So still a very, very good QB prospect, worthy of that franchise label. Ty Simpson, on the other hand, though, the next guy up, and his best film from 2025 was really good. You're looking at that midseason stretch games like LSU, where he was really in rhythm. He was showing good processing ability, anticipation over the middle. And I love how easily he retorques his hips. He's very mechanically sound when he's in rhythm, right? He can get that hip torque, that full velocity generation, can keep his shoulders level and hit guys over the middle. But down the stretch, and there's been some speculation that he was dealing with injuries too. His play was not quite as consistent. The word that always comes to mind for me, and this is not a word that you want to hear with a QB, because in the NFL, you're facing pressure on every single down, both ambient pressure, right, with the situation, but also direct pressure, guys rushing the A gap, the B gap, the C gap. So you can't be frenetic as a QB. And that's the word that always comes to mind with Ty Simpson. There's a lot of freneticism to his game where he's just a little too jittery, a little too easily spooked off his spot, or out of sync, especially down the stretch this past year. Right at his best, you saw a little more composure, but for a guy who's frenetic he can be frenetic with his mechanics and his accuracy and situational precision, right? And even the processing, sometimes where he's spooked off his initial read, is a little late to recover as a result, missing progressions over the middle because of that. You can't be inconsistent on the operational side when you're not an elite physical talent, right? Ty Simpson, 6'1", 211 at the NFL Combine, not an elite athlete, a good creator, right? Has good arm talent, but is he elite in any of those categories? No, right? So I know people have been throwing around the top end comp of a Brock Purdy if he can get that operational consistency. My comp for him through the cycle has been Mark Bulger, going back to the Rams. I think Mark Bulger was a little bit bigger, but you're looking at a guy, again, who was more reliant on mechanical congruence and processing, right? And at his best, accuracy when he was in rhythm, but didn't quite have that level of physical talent to elevate the Rams and get them to Super Bowl contention consistently, right? So I still think Ty Simpson, top 50 player, but is he a first rounder for me? No, but I also understand scarcity is a really powerful elevating factor. And then
quick to your scarcity point, because I want to take it to the Eagles. And I want to bring it up to Garrett. I want to get your thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier, because we don't have scarcity. You got to see the warts. He played a lot at LSU. I know the Eagles have had interest in him for a long time. When Doug Nussmeier was here, they got to know him very well, sort of a friend of the program. Where are you after the poor season? And obviously we were talking about him as a potential top 15 pick at one point. Now he's kind of off the radar. What do you think him as a prospect? Because I think, the Eagles have a history of taking quarterbacks when you might not expect it, and he might be a day 2 guy for them.
For sure. And just like scarcity can elevate a day 2 guy into day 1, it can elevate a day 3 into day 2, right? So it kind of goes down the board. Garrett Nussmeier, and we're talking about scarcity a lot, so let me go all the way back to the summer of 2025, right? When we didn't know who was going to be the QB1 of the 2026 class. And you see everyone rolling out their way too early mock drafts, right? I do think scarcity may have played a hand in elevating his preseason profile a little bit. He had a day 2 grade for me, a mid to late day 2 at best coming into the cycle. So I never really saw him as that top 15 prospect bona fide. And a big reason for that, the talent profile, right? I just don't think he quite has the high, not a prototypical QB, right? And I do think the arm strength when he's healthy is above average. Is it elite? No. And then he's not really a high-end athlete either. There's kind of the craftiness of a Tony Romo or Andy Dalton at his peak, but again, not a guy who's going to consistently stress defenses with his physical tools. And then you look at the operational inconsistency that followed in 2025. There were times when, I think as a processor, he's elite. He's one of the best processors in the class. And you can really tell that he is an offensive coordinator's son with the way that he can operate and dictate the offense pre-snap, right? Undress defensive looks, get players in position, things like that, read coverages and spacing as well pre-snap to identify opportunities. But post-snap, there's just too many head-scratching decisions, right? Where sometimes he'll have good field vision, but he'll miss a linebacker undercutting a second-level window, right? And just throw an interception or he'll have lapses in situational precision, again, making receivers work harder than they should for balls. Now, there's a very important caveat. Garrett Nussmeier was dealing with an oblique injury through most of the 2025 season, and that severely affects your velocity, your throwing motion, and your comfort, right? So I understand why there was that downturn, right? And I'm definitely, and looking at the Senior Bowl, he played very well at the Senior Bowl. I think he progressed through the week, and on day 3 in particular, day 3 of practices through the 2-minute drill, you saw him again doing what he does best, commanding the offense, keeping them on schedule, making quick, decisive reads, and throwing with accuracy and velocity when he's healthy, right? So I think going back to the film is going to be really challenging, right? Because 2025, he was not at his best, clearly. I think at his best, you could rationalize him being a day 2 pick for sure. And I think in the right situation, he could be a really solid spot starter. Again, my high-end comp is Andy Dalton. I think at his best, he can be a solid year-over-year starter for you. But eventually, you're going to find that he's not going to elevate your team, and you're going to look elsewhere for that next level, right? So a really interesting evaluation. I think he wins in a lot of ways that are translatable when he's at his best with cerebral play style, processing, and accuracy when he's comfortable and not below 100%. But you also have that middling physical talent profile that's really tough to get away from, right? So you got to be tempered with your expectations and with your valuation, but especially like you said, in this class, scarcity, right? That's a really big factor. And he's got the pedigree coaching background with his father. He's got the experience. He's got the processing ability. And I think he has okay baseline talent. Again, far from elite, right? Closer to average than elite. But all it takes is one team to get won over by the mental makeup and kind of, believe that he's above average in that talent threshold, and that alone can get him in a day 2 range. So I'd say, still a mid to late day 2, early day 3 guy for me. But if there's anyone who can elevate into day 2, it's him because of those underlying factors.
Great breakdown there for me and Cummings on the quarterbacks. Ian, let's go to the Eagles, man. Big talk right now in Philadelphia is replacing future Hall of Fame tackle Lane Johnson. Now, Lane's going to return this year, but walk me through the tackles in this draft. Who do you like? Who do you think could be there at 23 if the Eagles did stay put, and maybe even a round 2 or a round 3 value? What do you make of the tackle position coming into the 2026 NFL draft?
Yeah, it's a really interesting group because I think a lot of the tackles are guys that we're looking at as potential tackle to guard converts, right? There aren't a lot of pure tackles that are going to garner early starting appeal in the NFL, right? But the class is very deep as far as interior line converts go. But if you're the Eagles, and I think the combine, in a sense, it might have helped. It might have not, because Monroe Freeling for Georgia tested extremely well. 6'7", I think 315, over 34-inch arms, ran a 4.91 40-yard dash, had a low 1.7 10-yard split. Just absolutely insane explosion in athleticism numbers. And then you turn on the tape, and he's got the flexibility. He's got the power profile, the angle IQ, and the run game too. A little rudimentary in pass protection. But the point being, Monroe Freeling will probably not be there anymore. I think Caleb Lomu has a good chance of being off the board before the Eagles pick. I have mocked him to the Eagles before, but he tested very well. And combining that with Spencer Fano's arm length being 32 1/8 inches, that might flip those guys, right? So maybe you see Fano fall down the board a little bit, but that puts Spencer Fano in the conversation potentially. Right now, we know the Eagles have traditionally preferred length, right? and mass at the tackle position. And Spencer Fano might fall below their thresholds, being 6'5.5", 311, only 32-inch arms. But athletically, this guy is one of the best in the class. And I think in particular, too, a lot of the soft skills that you need to succeed at offensive line are there with him. You look at balance, you look at knee bend, hip flexibility, both to, transition laterally, but then also to siphon hand power from your hip transitions. I think Spencer Fano is very proficient in that area. So if the Eagles go beyond their thresholds, right, Spencer Fano could be an option late in round one. I think that, the measurements could kick him down a little bit, but again, he's got that lateral mobility. I think he has the athleticism. I think he has the upper lower synergy, all of those things to compensate for that lacking arm length profile. Now, if they want to go with pure measurables, Caden Proctor is also here, and he's a mountain of a man. I think he measured in still over 350 pounds after trimming down for the combine, which is just certifiably insane. Again, the proportional length is not elite. It's around 33.5, I believe. And also he's a little stiff as an athlete. I've always viewed him as probably a likely convert inside to guard long-term, but I will concede later in the year, he started to kind of take a trend upward with his technique and operational utility a little bit more, right? And you're still working with a guy who, for his size, has really good knee bend, really good leverage acquisition. The anchor strength can be suffocating when he gets his hands on you. And I do think he's a very, very good an asset in the run game where he can move guys off the line and get really easy displacement energy too. So Caden Proctor is right there too. But Blake Miller, I'd say from Clemson, is another really compelling
that's who
player.
I was going to ask you.
He's got the length, he's got the height, the lean mass, and again, the athleticism just pops, man. He tested exactly the way you expected him to. Mid-30s vertical, just over a 5 in the 40, but a really good 10-yard split too. And on film, man, I mean, he was. You're looking at a guy who started, I think, 54 games in his collegiate career. He was a 4-year starter. So that kind of dependability is really valuable. And I think the earlier years of his career were a little rocky, but 2025 was his best season. And you saw a guy who really improved his again, leverage acquisition. I think for his size is really good knee bend, gets that pad level attuned really well for his size. And then his anchor strength was probably my biggest concern entering 2025. I do still think there are lapses with his anchor where he can do a little bit better job fully swiveling and absorbing power outputs, but I do think he improved there. He's got really good upper lower synergy. He flashes really good hand usage. And in the run game, he is one of the rangiest blockers in the class that you'll see. I mean, just time and time again, he's pulling from the C gap to the opposite C gap and reaching his landmark in a timely manner. He's climbing to the second level and reaching his landmarks and just driving through linebackers too. So, a really fun physical talent who also has the experience and the baseline level of operational utility in both phases that you want. So I like Blake Miller a lot. I believe he's just outside my top 32. So a really good player and a guy that I like a lot. One more player that I'll bring up in this offensive tackle breakdown is Maxx Crosby from Arizona State.
I'm glad you brought him up because I wanted to know how to pronounce his name. Say it one more time, Ian.
Maxx Crosby. Yep.
Nice.
So he's originally from Nigeria. He didn't play high school football at all. He played basketball and soccer, I believe, and then went the JUCO route, obviously not having that football experience, but, came to Arizona State and immediately started to get into the starting rotation. And this past year, he put up one of the best performances against that Texas Tech duo, Romello Height and David Bailey, right? With Crosby, you're looking at a guy who is probably going to be an older rookie. He might be as old as 24, 25, right? So there aren't a lot of definitive age valuations out there. So if the Eagles have a strict age threshold, that's where they might prefer a younger player like a Fano if he falls, or Miller probably being a little bit younger, right? But I think Crosby, if you're willing to work with, again, it's not a good combination to be an older prospect, but also have a relative lack of experience at the tackle position because you have a shorter runway, right? He's going to be 30 a little bit quicker. And there's still some work to do with the stunt vision and the processing of, ancillary peripheral threats, right? So I think if he's one-on-one on an island, I do think he has the matching ability. The athleticism pops with this guy, and he's got almost 34-inch arms, over 320 pounds, really big dude who carries the weight well. At the Senior Bowl, that was something that popped right away in one-on-ones. Just he moves very well laterally. That can be to his detriment sometimes where he'll overset a little bit and give an inside counter lane. But again, at the Senior Bowl, I think you saw his propensity for fast learning because his first day was a little rough. And you'd heard people talking about, hey, look at this guy, Maxx Crosby, don't look away from him because he might be a first-round riser after the Senior Bowl. After the first day, people were kind of iffy on that. Like, oh, he was a little inconsistent, but he came back on day 2 and day 3 and just built every single day. And by day 3, he was one of the best offensive linemen there. He was, giving a lot better precision and timing with his strikes. He was being patient with his redirections and his angle positioning. And he was just suffocating, just latching and just erasing any power when he got his hands on guys. So the power profile, the size, the athleticism, all of those things are there with him. And I also think he grew as a run blocker this past year, showing off better ability to get in space and fully drive through space defenders too. So he's trending up. The runway is a little bit shorter with him, and he's a little bit raw in terms of processing stunts, right? I think his angle IQ is really good in the run game, but in the NFL, diverse stunt looks, guys coming from the second level, slanting rushes from the interior positions. Like, you need to be aware of all those different things. And I think he's a little bit more raw there than some of the other guys like Blake Miller or the Utah duo. But if you're willing to go through that 1 to 2 year runway, kind of getting more reps against those different types of looks, he's got the athleticism, he's got the size, he's got the really clean pass sets and pass protection, and the profile is conducive to people moving in the run game too. So another guy that I like a lot.
All right. That's a hell of a breakdown. I do want people to focus on Blake Miller. Remember, the Eagles are moving away from Jeff Stoutland. They're going to more of a wide zone stretch scheme. So, C gap to C gap, you're saying keep an eye on that kid, because I think he might be a fit for the new Eagles philosophy, at least projected. We talked about tight end a little bit, and we're going heavy offense because the Eagles haven't drafted offense in a long time. So everybody thinks they're going to go offense. So we'll put Sadiq aside. They got to rebuild. If they don't get Dallas Goedert back, they have to rebuild the entire tight end room. So I want 2 things from you, and I want the best sort of dual move, modern move tight ends in this draft after Sadiq. And then I want just the true Y back, the inline guy who can block, because they need somebody who can set the edge.
For sure. And my philosophy, my grading scale, I changed it this year at the tight end position. I heavily inflated the blocking score, right? Because I think blocking and your ability to block in line, like you said, can dictate which personnel packages you can be utilized in, right? Yeah. But that said, if you need a flanker, if you need a really good receiving threat, you got to look at Eli Stowers. I think, jumping a 45-inch vertical at the NFL Combine at his side, just insane.
He had a bigger relative athletic score, than Sadiq. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. And it's really representative of the fact, like, in the receiving phase, this dude is explosive, and it shows on film too. Really easy accelerator, glider up seams, and he's got pretty good redirection ability and angle freedom on cuts too. His yard per route run figure, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was better than a lot of receivers in this class. So looking at his pure efficiency as a receiving threat, both, being able to separate and splice through zones with that explosive athleticism and long speed, but then also being able to box guys out and make plays at the catch point with that taller, leaner frame. All of those things show up with him on film. And I think, it absolutely comes at the cost. There's a trade-off with the blocking ability. Eli Stowers was drastically underutilized as a blocker. And I think because of that, when he is on the field and blocking reps, it's predominantly, out in the slot as a big slot. You barely see any inline reps with him or working on the move off motions too. But even then, there's not a lot of power generation. There's not a lot of proper leveraging or drive. So you really are working from the ground up in terms of blocking. But if you're willing to accept that trade-off, he's a really good receiving threat with that, again, elite explosive upside. And I think he can be an X factor. I look at Aronde Gatson II, who was really productive as a rookie for the Chargers, in mainly in that flanker role, where he was working mostly in space as kind of a big slot weapon. That's probably the vision that you're going to have for Stowers too, right? I think Michael Trigg from Baylor is another one who kind of fits that mold. Trigg is a lot longer. He measured in with over 34-inch arms. I don't think he's quite the athlete that Stowers is from a functional sense. So again, Trigg he's explosive up seams, but he's not quite as quick-footed. He's not quite as good on direction changes. But again, you are working with a guy who's athletic enough to, again, get up seams, box guys out, and then the 34-inch arms really help with the catch radius, the playmaking ability. He's got some crazy catches on tape. I think Stowers within the receiving tight end mold is probably a little bit more translatable, but those are 2 as the pure receiving threats. Now, as the Y who can play inline, some of the more complete players in the class, I'll throw Dallin Bentley from Utah in that conversation, and he tested very well from the Utes. I think it was around 6'4", mid 250s. His playing weight is probably 260, over 33-inch arms, ran a low 4.6, had a 35-inch vertical. And on film, this is a guy, and I think he tested fairly well in the agilities in the shuttle as well. But on film, Dow and Bentley, and I think he gets really overlooked in this tight end class. You don't hear a ton of people talking about him, but his play style is very, very complete in both phases of the game. As a route runner, I think he's one of the best at cutting tight angles, and he's got a true route tree. I mean, this is not a guy who's just running, seam routes, right? He can run in breakers and digs and slants, and he's got some corner routes in his arsenal too, right? And he can get out in the flats and make himself available for run after catch with that rumbling explosion. But then as a blocker too, he's well leveraged. He can get under guys in the pad level battle, and he can drive through with that lower body action. So just so many things, so many boxes that Dow and Bentley checks. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's my tight end 3 right now. Oscar Delp from Georgia is another one within that conversation. And actually a really interesting tidbit that came out at the combine. I believe he was playing it was a foot injury. It was maybe a bone fracture in his foot for most of the 2025 season. Yeah. And you watch him on film, he's one of the most explosive athletes in this tight end class, even with that. So, toughness, right? Grit, but also just a really good seam stretcher, a really good athlete. There is some inconsistency with the hands at the catch point sometimes, but again, I think the body control is definitely there. I think the catch point composure, the ability to make high difficulty adjustments, right, and box guys out is there. He's got the run after catch ability with that combined explosion and that forward churning contact balance. And then he's also one of the best blockers in the class. You can play him in line, you can play him out wide if you need him to. He's, again, for a guy who's 6'5", really good at acquiring leverage, getting his base beneath him, and kind of weaponizing that explosive energy to just really reset the contact point. And then even as a pass protector, there were reps where Georgia was passing the ball, but they couldn't pass up Delp's value as a pass protector. So they just left him in as a 6th offensive lineman, and he would go to work. So again, I think the 2-phase value with Dow and Bentley, with Oscar Delp is there. I'll throw in Eli Raridan from Notre Dame, another really good player, not quite as fluid, a little bit stiffer in the hips, a little bit more of your monolithic seam stretcher who's not going to be too, spry on redirections. But again, a guy who can make body control adjustments, who's a really good blocker at the point of attack, and has the length that you want to forklift guys out of gaps too. So the list goes on. There's a few others. Justin Joly is an intriguing receiving option as well. And I think Joly, if you're looking for a guy who gives good receiving value, but also at least makes a good effort as a blocker, I think he's better as a blocker than Stowers and Trigg. But also I think Joly isn't quite as explosive or fluid, right? So there's trade-offs everywhere you go. But I think this tight end class is really strong. And you go down the list too. There were some guys who tested really well. Matthew Hibner from SMU. If you're looking for more of a receiving threat, he was standing out at the Senior Bowl and then tested very well at the NFL Combine. So you have depth. You have layers of options in this class. If you can't get a guy in round 2 or 3, day 3, there might still be options for you there. So it's going to be exciting to see. I think the Eagles could be, well versed to double dip if they wanted to, because there is a lot of talent available.
Yeah, it seems like it. Ian, one position, we talked a lot of offense there. Last one for me here. The one thing that I think could happen here that could flip the Eagles' draft plans on their head would be if somebody gives Jaylen Phillips massive money in free agency. And then I think that edge rusher spot comes into play, maybe even as their number 1 overall pick at 23 overall. Just your quick thought on the edge rusher class and who could be the value there at 23 overall. Because I do think that's the thing. If Phillips is gone, I think that throws the Eagles' draft plans on their head, and they could end up with another defensive pick in round 1. What do you see at that spot?
Yeah, round 1, it's really interesting, right? Because you got David Bailey, you got Arvell Reese, you got Ruben Bain. We can basically assume that none of those guys are going to be there at 23, right? I think the next guy up is Keldrick Falk, right? I don't know if he's a schematic fit for Vic Fangio, who likes to use guys from wider alignments. I think Keldrick Falk definitely has the build-up acceleration and the power profile if you want to use him there. But I've been looking at him more as kind of an even front defensive end who could rotate inside the 3-tech and 4-eye in a John Franklin Myers role potentially, right? So I don't know if he's that fit from the outside perspective, right? But if they have the vision for him, they could. I don't know if he's a perfect fit. Akeem Mesidor from Miami is one that could be a really good fit if you're willing to look past the age. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, but I think for the Eagles in particular, who are trying to extend this immediate contention window, right? Akeem Mesidor is a player who I think fits that to a T, right? Right away, he's going to give you a pass rush catalyst. His arms are a little bit under 33 inches, but he's still a really explosive player with good finesse and lateral agility and compact power for his size. The pass rush arsenal is there, and he's a really quality and operationally sound, technically sound, high motor run defender too. So the floor is extremely high with Akeem Mesidor. The age is a concern, but if the Eagles are willing to look past that immediate contributor off the edge who allows you to not think about that for a little bit, I think TJ Parker is an intriguing player, more of an early round 2 guy for me. So it would be a reach in round 1. I don't think he's an elite physical talent. I think the combine showed that, but again, kind of a well-rounded, well-leveraged player with good compact mass, good proportional length. And, again, he's not going to be elite in any area. His pass rush bag can be a little inconsistent, but it's definitely there. We've seen him win with forklift swims, with power, with bull rushes, with club rips, right? So he's got all of that, but the consistency is still coming along. The last one that I'll bring up is Malachi Lawrence from UCF. And the round 1 was not a conversation for him before the combine. I still think he's probably more of a round 2 guy, but the way that he tested, I think it was a low 4.5 40-yard dash, over 40-inch vertical at around 6'4", over 250 with over 33-inch arms. He's got all of the physical components that you would want. He was one of the best edge rushers at the Shrine Bowl, showing off that lateral explosion and that ability to offset and then capitalize with that quick acceleration upfield. And then even though he doesn't consistently channel the power that you would expect with his length and mass, that those components are there. And then he's explosive, agile. He's got a working pass rush arsenal, right? And I think he's trending up as a run defender. I think he can get moved off his spot a little bit too easily. But again, you're banking on that pass rush upside to carry you from wider alignments there. So I think those are the names that come off the board for the Eagles. They'll have options, but it's going to be tricky when those top guys are already gone.
All right, Ian Cummings, one of the best in the business. If you heard that, delivers again. Make sure you follow him on X at IC_draft. He's the guy in charge of the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. So go over there, profootballnetwork.com/mock draft. Also, one of the guys, well, I don't say this often, but Ian's one of the only guys in the world that's got a bigger vocabulary than me. So I got a big ego, but he's got a bigger vocabulary. But we're going to tap into you again, Ian. I always love talking to you. One of the best in the business when it comes to the NFL draft. And keep an eye because I'm going to be texting you. We need more of your expertise.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Ian.
There's Ian Cummings joining us right here on Birds 365. Great show there from Ian. Appreciate all that draft breakdown. John, we didn't even get to the wide receiver spot.
Yeah, I know.
I was going to go there, but I decided to go edge just because I thought, it's more likely that Phillips walks and AJ's traded at this point. So let me go to edge. But we'll get Ian back on. Man, he knows how to break down a freaking draft board, doesn't he, Johnny Mac?
Dude's unbelievable, man. And, I called him one of the best in the business. He's just, when it comes to his level of knowledge of different prospects, I don't know if anybody beats it. Sometimes, and you're going down the draft like that tight end I never heard of. The guy, when he was talking about the blocking tight end and I got to go back and listen to, he's not even on the board of many people.
Right.
And, to talk about a position in that kind of depth, it's rare. There's a lot of draft people around there, but he's one of the best.
He really is. No doubt about it. I like your quip too, that he's got the better vocab. I don't know, John, I have a hard time believing that as good as Ian is, that he tops the vocabulary of one John McMullen.
Well, you heard it, man. You heard it. He's when it comes to the NFL draft, and everybody loves mock drafts, and they do. Pro Football Network, as I said, .com/mock draft. They have the best simulator. So if you want to do your mock drafts, go over there. And we'll have them on hopefully a couple of times before the draft because nobody does it better than him.
Yeah, agreed. I'd like to try and get him on again, maybe weekly. We got about 6 weeks, maybe every other week or something like that. We'll reach out to Ian and see what he can do. Great show there today, Johnny Mac. John, it's good to have a full show here where we got into what's coming in free agency next week. We had a great draft breakdown today, and still feels like there's a lot that's going to change in the next 2 weeks, even with this Eagles team before the draft. So we'll really start to get a feel for, what direction this team is going. And maybe even next time we talk to Ian, we'll have more clarity on,
we definitely will.
I feel like you're going to really learn some things here in these next couple of weeks, and we'll be able to hone in on what the most important topics are.
Yeah, we definitely will. Because to your point about the edge rushers, they're not even in the conversation unless the Eagles can't bring back Jaylen Phillips, and
Right.
then you don't start. Not saying you start talking about them on day 3, but they're not.
Do you agree with my assessment though? If Phillips walked, then that would be the one thing that could turn their draft plans on their head in terms of their first round pick.
Oh, it definitely adds edge into the equation. It's
Right.
not gonna, it's not gonna be edge
Yeah, the
or
board's got to
bust.
fall. Yeah, we
Yeah,
know that. So
it's not gonna be edge or bust. But yeah, but it definitely changed. Yeah, completely. If they have Jaylen Phillips, they're not edges out of the equation. If until day 3, if they don't have them, it's in the equation round 1, and you'll see that amp up. I think by the Eagles, whether it's top 30 visits or pro day news, they'll start honing in more on the edge rushers to get a better feel of, if anybody deserves to be in that spot. Um, the good thing is, though, I do think it's a good year for the tackles, and I think that's still the heavy favorite. And man, I'm starting to load in on Blake Miller, which I
yeah,
know won't excite people, but
I like him. I've been looking into him. You mentioned him a bunch last week, John. Even 2 weeks ago, you were mentioning the name, and now I feel like it's starting to be mentioned a lot more. And you're right, from the schematic shift of the offense, it does. The fit makes a whole lot of sense with Blake Miller. I just don't know if the value is right at 23. That's not for me to decide, but that's the question I'd have.
yeah, well, and the same thing, it depends. Like Monroe Freeling was the other guy, because I think they're shifting a little bit more towards the athleticism. And now, because of how well he tested at the combine, as Ian mentioned, I don't even think he's going to be there at 23. So change. And I also mentioned yesterday, I was interested why all of a sudden you see Spencer Fano started dropping a little bit. And, he gave you the answer, the short arms. But that's really important for NFL teams. So maybe all of a sudden a guy early in the process, most people had in the top 10. Well, he's probably not going to go in the top 10 now. So, he might fall and he might be in the equation. Um, Yeah, so a lot of movement, a lot of change when you see some of these testing numbers, and it was a good point also by Ian. They every single position set a record except for one for being the fastest position in combine history. Every single position.
To your
Um,
point about how players are preparing for the
yes,
combine, yeah, right.
and Ian's point, if you're not going to test well, a lot of guys don't work out because they know they're not going to test well, and they go to do it at their pro days where at least they're going to have a little bit of
Controlled, more
shall we say,
controlled.
nudging of the numbers.
Right.
Penn State is famous for their nudging of the numbers.
The Penn State
Uh,
nudging of the numbers. That's funny.
um, so yeah, that was a good point by Ian as well. That's one of the reasons, as well as guys are specifically training. But guys who know they're fast, like Jeremiah Love, like everybody's like, well, watch this guy. He's going to test well. And those guys tested well. Kenyon Sadiq, obviously, out of the world. Um, but everybody knew he's going to test well. So part of the context of why that's going on. And I thought Ian brought some good information to that as well.
No doubt about it. John, one more super chat here we'll get to. Pumper just sends it in. What's up, Pump? Appreciate it, man. Good to hear from you, Pump. It's been a bit, he says. Y'all still drafting Bane with them 30-inch arms? Hell no, man. Brother, I don't care about the production. And Pumper checking it.
Yeah, I mean, that's he's got short arms, and that generally does not bode well for edge rushers in the NFL. Maybe he's got to move inside. Maybe he's got to be more of a 3 technique. Just use his explosion inside. But, he's a good player, and he might be the kind of guy that can overcome the physical limitations, but not in the realm for the Eagles. He's not going to fall to 23. So he might fall a little bit, but I find it very hard to believe he'll be out of the top 10. There's not enough big-time prospects in this draft.
Yeah, agreed. We'll see what ends up happening. All right, John, your final thoughts here today on a Tuesday edition of Birds 365, my friend.
Yeah, good draft talk. I like the bell curve analogy. It's deep in the middle.
Right.
So maybe not the greatest at the top. Interesting. You said about 24, 25 first round grades. So the Eagles are right there on the cusp of getting a real first round selection if things break the right way and they make the right decision. Again, nobody's got a lot of blue chips. Ian didn't like. I have two, Jeremiah Love and Caleb Downs. He mentioned two, Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles, both from Ohio State. But he said Love was top 10, so I don't think he has Love in that category, which I'll happily disagree with. But the point is, there's not a lot of really blue chip players in this draft.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. John, great show today, my man. We will talk to you tomorrow on a Wednesday edition, I think, which marks the return of
Mike Gill by the way, Mike Gill's one of the luckiest people on the planet because he got out of the Middle East. I mean, the timing did not work out for him.
John, this is why I don't have much interest in traveling to the Middle East, man. I'm good. I'm good in America for now, okay? I don't know, man. That's scary shit.
That is scary shit. So we'll talk to Mike about that a little bit tomorrow. He's back from Egypt and Jordan just in time. Just got out in time.
He got his Pizza Hut and he got out of Dodge.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that.
John, good show, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow, right, brother?
All right. See y'all.
All right, thanks, John. There's Johnny Mac, John McMullen. Follow him at JF McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Appreciate him today. Appreciate Ian Cummings. Great job from Ian Cummings. He is always very impressive. We have him on each year leading into the draft. I'm hoping to maybe do a little even more with him. I'm going to reach out to him after the show today and see if he'll do a weekly spot up into the draft, maybe even a week or two after the draft to try and break down who the Eagles pick and, get the deep breakdowns of those guys. That guy knows his shit when it comes to players and prospects. So I did appreciate Ian Cummings for joining the show today. Very well done by him, and appreciate all you guys for being here today. Great show today. I thought we had some good conversation, including wide receiver talk that wasn't all about A.J. Brown getting traded. I mean, I think the talk is A.J. getting traded, but, with that comes a lot of what are they going to do at receiver if they did trade him? You know what I mean? So I think that conversation is even more relevant than, well, do you think they'll trade AJ? So we had some of that conversation today. We talked a little bit about Devonta Smith and, how the Eagles feel about him moving forward. And then obviously we had the deep dive into the NFL draft with Ian Cummings. So great show today. Appreciate everybody being here. Big Mike, good to see you, brother. Happy you're back safe from where were you? West Virginia, I think you mentioned, right? The mountains of West Virginia. Is that what it was, my friend? You got to let me know. Big Mike, good to see you, though. Daz, I appreciate your support and your help yesterday, my man. Might be hitting OBS. Was the stream better today? I don't know if the stream was better today or not. The other thing I might do is I might just pick up a dedicated router back here, another one. I already spend, $200, $300 a month, so we'll see. Dabney, I know you're in here saying AJ's not getting traded. Dabney thinks I have malicious intent about AJ Brown. It's like, I really don't, Dabney. I just cover the what's going on, man. And look, there's a lot of conversation about it, Dabney. So whether you like it or not, I think there's some truth to what you say about, it always gets blown up. Whenever there's even a 1 or 2% chance, that's the reality of media. I mean, when there's a 1 or 2% chance of something, people parlay it into that it's a high probability. It's not the case, but come on, man. There's a lot of smoke around this AJ Brown stuff, and we'll see what ends up happening with it. But appreciate all you guys being here. I'll take some comments from the great people of JAKIB Nation. Stream quality way better. Good, Steve. Appreciate it, man. Stream has been good. All right, that's cool, man. There's Big Mike. Thanks. Yes, sir. West Virginia was beautiful. Love it, Big Mike. The Smokies were dope too, man. I enjoyed the Smoky Mountains. I went into the town of Pigeon Forge, and then we went into the town of Gatlinburg. Let me just say this, and I mean this with all due respect. All right. I prefer the mountains. I was good at the cabin in the mountains, all right? The towns reminded me of of when I was in college down south, and we would go into the towns, and we traveled to one of the towns, and just a classic South town, Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. But there was like rides and shit everywhere. I'm like, where the fuck am I, man? Put me back in the woods in the cabin. I'm good up there. All right, I'm good up there. So I really enjoyed it, though, man. It was nice break for me, man. I've been working so much. I've been locked in, and sometimes I sit here and I fucking stare at this computer screen all day. 16, 17, 18 hours a day, man. It was nice to get out of the office and get out into the sunshine and into nature. So it was nice, man. Rico Martin, let me get to that super. Sorry if I missed somebody. Sauce it up. What's up, brother? Appreciate it, man. How open is our window until we got a rebuild? It's a good question. I mean, I'll ask it to John tomorrow. I don't think you can really tell at this point, Sauce it up. What I'll say is, let's see what happens in free agency and the draft, because you got 6 weeks until we know what that looks like. And then we'll have a better understanding of where the roster is. But the thing I'd say right now that feels to me more prominent this year than it has been in years prior is the potential for it to go one way or the other seems greater. Like last year, it felt like, and we won the Super Bowl, so it was a little bit of a different offseason, but it felt like we were going to be a contender. The question was, how much could we contend, or how far could we go? This year, it feels like if AJ goes and Goedert goes and Phillips doesn't get signed and you're looking at a bunch of draft picks, like that to me doesn't feel like a team that's going to be able to contend. Honestly, contend. They're going to be a good team, but I'm talking about the one of the 5 or 6 teams that can win a Super Bowl. There's only 5 or 6 a year about. Sometimes more, sometimes less. So I do feel like, with the right moves, AJ comes back and you make a great draft pick. You sign Jaylen Phillips, you replace the tight end properly. All right, you're going to be in a good spot. If Goedert goes and AJ gets traded and Jaylen Phillips walks and again, you have a bunch of draft picks, I'm not going to feel real good about being a true and honest Super Bowl contender. Will they be a top 15 team? I'd almost guarantee that. But a Super Bowl contender, that's where I think the discrepancy lies, and we'll see if the Eagles are able to fill the gap. All right, so I appreciate the super chat, man. Appreciate the super chat. Love the mountains. Yeah, me too, man. Me too. It's pretty dope. I miss out west, man. I miss out west. All right. All right, so I miss the out west. There's like the two things that feel like you're in like God's earth is how I would put it. Like we're in Philly and New York City and the big cities. They're concrete jungles, man. They're all man-made, right? I mean, they feel different than when to me, it's the beach and it's the mountains. Those are the two things where you can look around, you can go out in the morning, you can listen to the animals or the water or the birds chirping and whatever, the trees crackling, the wind blowing. The mountains to me, those, are just above the beach for me. I mean, it just is, man. The mountains are fucking something else for me. I go out west, I'm like, man, whoa! Shit fires you up, man. It gets you going. So I haven't been out west, and I work so much. Last year we went to the Super Bowl, so we worked late into February. I work all year round, but I mean, like, busy season was late into February last year. So I didn't get a chance to go out west. This year, I got the wedding coming up. I'm just, I've had so many expenses already this year. It is nauseating. My expense list in 2026, guys, we're done 2 months. My expense list in 2026 is fucking nauseating. All right. So I didn't have a chance to go this year. But next year I'm going for sure. I'm going out west again, and I'll lock in, get a nice ski trip out west. I kind of want to hit Jackson Hole again. I want to maybe do somewhere, maybe Colorado again. I've done Colorado a lot of times, so we'll see. But I want to get back to the mountains. Love the mountains, man. Love them. I am a skier. I do ski. Yep, Casey. I haven't skied. I didn't ski this year, but that's all right. All right. So we'll see. We'll see. 25 Super Bowl felt so within reach, even with the bum offense. Yeah, it did. Honestly, it did. Ray says the window is always open as long as Hurts is leading the charge. Well, Ray, where I do agree with you is, you can say a lot about Jalen Hurts, and not you specifically, just, I say you in general. People can say a lot about Jalen Hurts, and I've had my comments about him. Sometimes, he's tremendously impressive, and sometimes he drives me to drink because the offense is so stagnant, and I get pissed off. But here's the one reality that cannot be denied. Jalen Hurts has done a lot of winning in his fucking career. Like, more winning than most achieve in a lifetime. From high school to college to the pros, multiple Super Bowls. I mean, it's impressive. So, Reyes, where you're right is that tends to be true in Jalen Hurts' career. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed every year. Doesn't mean it's all on him. Doesn't mean that, there's not the deficiencies or things that you have to work around. But where you are correct is where Jalen Hurts goes, winning seems to happen. Okay? So I do think it's a fair thought. All right? Rasputin says, so Rasputin, I have a pretty damn good processor, dude. Like, I don't think that's the problem at all. I'll read it to you. I still got my box right here. Rasputin, I have a hard time believing that. Ready? Here it is. You got the studio box here. 64 gigabytes of RAM, a terabyte of storage. I always like to keep a terabyte. I use a bunch of cloud storage, and I have a bunch of SSD drives as well, but I do like having a lot of storage. 16-core CPU and 40-core GPU. M4 Max. Bro, that's a lot of CPU and a lot of GPU. 40-core GPU. There's no way, man. There's no way. Little old StreamYard, which worked perfectly for 4 years on my M1 iMac, is giving my Mac Studio a hard time. I just can't buy that. So, we'll see. We'll see. M4 Max, man. M4 Max. Yeah, M4 Max. Very, very good computer. So, we'll see, man. I got the Mac Minis here running that they don't do my processing for my shows, but we'll see. I'm working on it. The weird part about it is the only thing that's slow or has given me a problem is StreamYard. It's literally it. I mean, I run a lot of shit in the day because I'm using so much of this stuff so much digital stuff that I have a lot of processes running, and I even have stuff running right now. Everything is lightning fast. Like fucking lightning fast. I mean, I don't have a single problem. And then I come on StreamYard, everything works, the internet works, everything works, except my stream gets blurry. I don't know what it is, but that's why I might just move off of StreamYard. I mean, they're giving me problems, they're giving John problems. The problem is that John and Dan are both technically challenged when it comes to, OBS and stuff like that. And then you need an easy way for guests to join the show, so the web-based StreamYard does help. It's web-based, so it doesn't even use that much GPU. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I'll ask my AI to see if it can troubleshoot. All right. Here's Ricardo. What's up, Ricardo? Bro, you need to find a receiver to replace Smitty's production because I guarantee you Smitty will replace AJ production easy. I stand on that. Well, look, I hope you're right, man. But I do agree with you. Even if Smitty becomes the one, you're gonna need a good two. Like I don't think there's a world that exists where you get rid of AJ, replace him with, let's say, I don't know, Darius Cooper or a draft pick or whatever the case might be, and you just expect this offense to be good. Like, I'm not saying the only way to be good is to keep AJ Brown. That's not what I'm saying. But you already have an offense that has struggled to move the ball through the air. You already have an offense that, I mean, I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, it's underperformed, relative to the talent on the board or on the team. You want to get rid of AJ? Like, I don't fucking know, man. That to me is like, So we'll see, man. But I think it's a good point, man. I'm pretty confident in Devonta too, but I'm kind of with John on bona fide 150 targets. That's a lot. So that's a lot of traffic for Devonta. So we'll see. Des, I use Brave personally, and then I use Chrome because it works best with StreamYard, or at least they say it does. But I'll go back and forth between Chrome and Brave for StreamYard. I use Safari for my personal browsing and, my encrypted stuff. And then I just StreamYard, just Chrome and Brave. I use Brave, though, a lot. Chrome a lot, too. I use them all. Yeah, no, they're Rasputin. That's overstating. Intuitively grasp. They're not going to grasp a single thing about it. In fact, what I'd have to do, Rasputin, is I'd have to give them another source to connect to. Potentially like Zoom, where they'd connect to Zoom, and then the stream would feed to OBS, and I would control it from OBS. So it'd be a complex setup. And honestly, it's something that I've never done. So I'm not super versed with OBS, but I can figure it out. I'm very tech savvy. I can figure stuff out on the computer. I use this shit all damn day. And the stuff happening with AI right now, I would encourage everybody to use it and to some regard. I mean, I don't know if you guys are Claude Code users or whatever you guys do. I don't know who works digitally. This is probably more for the people who work digitally, but the stuff you can build right now is simply insane, man. So get to it, man. Focus in on it. It's a good time to be alive. All right, you can increase your productivity tenfold, literally. So we'll see. Here's Big Mike. Zander, does the talent equal what they're paying for the talent and the output? I'd say no, Big Mike, but I mean, Big Mike, I don't know. You've been to 2 Super Bowls in 4 fucking years, Big Mike. I mean, what do you want? There's Big Mike. There's a lot of ways to look at it. It's like you can be a doomer and say, "Oh, the offense is 25th, and I want them to be top 10." They've gone to 2 Super Bowls. Like what? Establishing how you define success for this team, I think, is relative and individual to each person. I will acknowledge that the offense pisses me off so much so to the point where I come on shows and I get called an Eagle hater or whatever. But at the end of the day, the success supersedes that, doesn't it? What's more important, having the number 1 offense like Dallas had, or being a successful football team? Because being a successful football team is different than being a successful offense. Do they go hand in hand? In some regard, yes, absolutely. But they're not exclusive to each other. They're not mutually exclusive, I guess would be the better word there. So the team has been very successful, and to act like they haven't been, I think, is disingenuous. And if you don't care about that, look, I think some people are honestly, and that's fine. I mean, Mike Gill brought this up once. John always goes back to it. Like one guy said to Mike, one of Mike Gill's friends said, "I don't even care about this winning. I want to be entertained. I want a good offense. I want to enjoy watching the game." Look, if that's what you want, that's fine. It's not what I want, but if it's what you want, that's cool, man. Then at least you're honest with yourself. But other people might want the team to be successful. Other people might rather win 11 games and have a number 1 offense. Other people might rather go to a Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls in 4 years than, just have a consistently great offense where A.J. Brown is fine. I don't know. I guess it depends how you determine it, man. See, this is I don't agree with this. Penn says, "Come on, Zander. Jalen and the offense held us from another Super Bowl." Well, Penn, what happened in 24 then? Like, it's fair to say, Penn, the offense didn't play great last year, and that impacted the team negatively. I agree. I said that that's one of the reasons they didn't win a playoff game. John and people were trying to put him on the defense for not playing that great in a playoff game. I'm like, all right, the offense is the number 1 problem. So I don't disagree that the offense struggled this year and that stopped them from getting to a Super Bowl. I would agree with that, but like, are we just going to remove the fact that they were also a part of 2 of the more successful teams in the Eagles' history? I'm not removing that. So did the offense hold us last year? Yeah, they had a bad year. Is the offense permanently going to hold us from reaching that pinnacle? I don't think there's no evidence to support that claim. None. Zero. Zip. Zilch. None. You got to try and look. I get it, but I think you have to figure out a way to thread the needle on where the truth lies. And I get it. It's hard to do. It's hard to do. Here's Big Mike Z. My point was we spend most of their money on the offense. The expectations are higher for them. Well, Big Mike, that's also circumstantial too, man. Like, they've drafted a bunch of first-round picks on defense. I mean, Big Mike, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Jaylen Phillips was a first-round pick. Nakobe Dean was a third-round pick. Quinyon Mitchell, a first-round pick. Cooper DeJean, a second-round pick. Jahad Campbell, a first-round pick. Like, bro, they're on rookie contracts, but that's a lot of fucking assets spent, Big Mike, on defense. So the circumstantial nature of it is the offense is older and they're on their second contracts. They're paid. The defense is younger and hasn't gotten to that point. It's about to flip, though. It's about to flip. I mean, if you pay Jordan, Jalen, and Phillips if you pay Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Jaylen Phillips this summer, guess what, dude? You're going to have $75, $80 million tied up on defensive contracts. So it's going to flip. It's going to flip quick, but I understand your point. I mean, when you have the highest paid offense in the history of pro football, which is what they had, you're right, Big Mike. That comes with great expectations, okay? And that's fair to expect those great things. It is. It is. It's fair to expect that. So I don't have a problem with your comment, Big Mike. Just adding the nuance. Niall, what's up, Niall? Good to see you, bro. Appreciate you being here. Good to see you, man. I haven't seen you in a bit. He says the defense got cooked against the Niners. No excuse. Well, they got cooked early, but what'd they give up? 23 points now? I mean, our offense put up 19. Like, did the defense have their best game? No, they did. Did the offense? Fuck no. 19 points? Come on. It's the playoffs. Let's get some points on the board here and win the game. The offense converts one more touchdown. Do they win that game? I think they do. Remember, the defense also had two interceptions in the second half of the game. Offense scored 3 points off it, Niall. So, again, no problem with the criticism of the defense. I don't think they were perfect, but to me, that fell more on the offense. I mean, you have 2 interceptions in the second half of a playoff game, 2 takeaways in the second half of a playoff game, and you get 3 freaking points off it, and you had favorable field position on both of them. Come on. Come on. So, I'm paying Davis. Jason, me too. I'm paying Davis for sure. I'd pay Davis, and, I understand the risk associated with this, but I would pay Jalen Carter too. I'd pay Jalen Carter too. I mean, I get it. There's some discipline things. There is some professionalism things. There is some concerns about the shoulders. There are some concerns about, his inability to be in shape. I don't know if that was because of the shoulders, if it's because of work. I don't know what you want to put it on. I understand those concerns, but, like, do you guys really see the Eagles letting Jalen Carter walk? No. So, get it done now, because you're going to have big contracts coming. If he plays good this year, that contract could go from 30 to literally 38. So get ahead of that. Get him paid. Give him the massive signing bonus. Kick the cap out and start to extend your what you're able to do, your flexibility. And now that's the big question. Like, is paying Carter a question? I don't think it is, Niall. Like, as much as the concerns might exist right now, coming off of this year and a down year, dude, they're paying him long term. At least that's what I think. Like, I think they're paying. I don't think there's a world that exists where Jalen Carter is on a different football team in 2 years or 3 years. I don't. So if that's what you've established, then pay him. Set up the right structure to try and accentuate the talents of the player. Put him in an environment where he can be in shape, where he can get his shoulders right. Like, do that stuff, and maybe that's easier said than done, but it's kind of how I feel about it. So we'll see, man. We led the league in 3 and outs. Very true, Brandon. That kills a defense. Very hard to be successful with that. So Ray says Cilios makes it sound like Carter isn't a generational. Well, I don't know, Ray. Like, I agree with you that Cilio maybe makes it sound a little worse than it is, but here would be my what I think is a fair question. I think everybody had exuberant expectations for Jalen Carter coming out, and especially after his second year where he really had a good year. You really thought, most people, and me included, really thought, all right, this guy legitimately could become the best defensive tackle in all of pro football. I think that was a fair and honest thought for most people who were optimistic on Jalen Carter and saw the potential this player had. He didn't have that type of year. He did not. Now, are you correct that maybe Celia goes too far? Yeah, that's fine. But I also don't think it's like a slam dunk, make him the highest paid DT in football. Give him the $35 million. I don't think that's guaranteed either. So I do think there's more nuance to it, but I'd be trying to get to a deal. Now, what does Drew Rosenhaus think? Who knows? Who knows? That's a fair question too. But all right, guys, got to run. Appreciate all you guys doing it today. I thought we had a great show today. I thought Ian Cummings was freaking awesome per usual. Appreciate all you guys being here. Rasputin, always great comments. Appreciate your help, my man, on trying to get everything figured out. So thanks for your support and your help. Tommy T, what's up, brother? Good to see you. Brandon Howard. Brandon, appreciate you, bro. Jason A-Team is in here. KCA. Guys, I'm thinking of doing some stuff for – so I worked on a new website. It's still not fully done yet, but everybody who's a member on the other website will be a member already on the new website. You should be able to log in and see that. If it doesn't work, please shoot me an email. I'll make sure I troubleshoot everything. I'm working on getting the whole back end set up kind of fixed. One of the things I struggled with early in my start to JAKIB was I never really got – I was so busy working in the business that I never really set up on the business properly. And that's kind of one of the struggles I have as, running the business and working in it is that I have to differentiate like doing my in work, which is doing my shows, being on the show, those things versus building the actual business out, the structure, the foundation, the accounts, the finances, the sponsorship portfolio, all of those different things, are a big part of it. So I've been trying to really focus in on that since the season ended. I've made a lot of headway, but still long way to go. So what I'm thinking of doing is some sort of promotional. I didn't do as many giveaways late in the year as I would have liked to do. So I want to give away some stuff. I want to try and do some things for our members, the people that are still a member. We appreciate your support. As always, I want to launch a big member campaign because that's going to be one of the biggest areas that JAKIB needs to grow in. We're moving into a different era of digital. When we started, JAKIB was a much different spot. Now we're in a completely different era, a completely different phase, and the world is rapidly changing when it comes to digital businesses. So I have to look at everything and really try and build it out. So one of the big ways to do it, man, is just having a loyal community. We have a great community. I think we've always had a great community. We've taken it to the next level, I think, in the last 2 years or so, with everybody that, that we have here, Brandon, Jason, KCA, a lot, Chuck Hutton, all you guys, Rasputin, Sig Lord, Primo. So we've made a lot of strides, but we have a long way to go. I'm always open to feedback from the people who consume. Look, you guys are what make JAKIB keep going. So there are things that I want to do that make sense, but at the end of the day, they gotta, I want them to serve the people. I want you guys to enjoy being an Eagle fan more because of JAKIB Sports. So with that framework, what things can I do on the back end? What things can I build out from the business to make this a better place for you to come every day, for make this a better place for you to engage in the community? What makes this a better thing for you to get the most value out of the time you spend here with JAKIB? Because it's much appreciated and it's not taken lightly. I don't take it for granted. I mean, if you guys spend as much as a minute here, I understand that's a minute that you could spend somewhere else and you spend it here. So I don't take it for granted. And I don't want to take advantage of it. I want to make it worth your time every single day. All right. So that's kind of how I view it. And a lot of people do it. So if you want to call it Siglord, oh yeah, I had to delete my Discord. I had that attached to an old email. So I might set up a JAKIB Discord. I know you guys already have one, but I can make it so like it's tied to the YouTube channel. And I can set up like bots and stuff that kind of like put out when a new video comes. So I feel like it'd be easier if I made my own, but I also know you guys are in one. So I don't know how to set that up. But you can email me, Zander@jakibsports.com. You can, I'll put that in the chat, Zander@jakibsports.com. That's the email. Everything's set up. So if you want to email me there, just reach out to me right there. I'll answer your emails. I always try and do it. All right. So appreciate all you guys doing it. BGG merch. I started it yesterday. The problem is I had to delete all the old files and make new ones. So it's a little bit of a tedious process. But I did put up 4 products. They should be working. And I'm going to get the rest of them up at some point, either today or tomorrow this week. All right. So I'll try and get that done for you guys as well. And maybe some new merch designs coming as well. Stout U is now expired. So we'll see what ends up happening. I'll try and make some new merch ideas. That's one of the things I want to do is I want to start to do more merch drops, like when something happens in Eagle Land, stuff like that, not just company branded merch. So we'll see. We'll see what we end up doing. Appreciate all you guys. Hit the like button. KCA, submit them, dude. I'll take them. Anything you guys want. I mean, I can't guarantee I'll do everything you recommend, but I will absolutely read it, respond, and listen. All right. So I am in build the company to be a better company for our great listeners and our great supporters. That's what my focus is this off season. So that's what I want to do. Thank you for doing it. Hit the like button, guys. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
EAGLES. Eagles.